Chapter 141-160. If the Lord thinks something is wrong, we can replace him. The quality of this batch of goods is very high. If we let this old thing destroy the quality of our place, it will be a bit of a loss. Disco looked at the silver-haired old man in front and whispered. He is also not quite sure whether Liang is dissatisfied with this slave Tilda. There are very few old slaves. Because the value is gone. Labor force. There are young people and even giants who can be used as labor. Women can't be the labor force, but they can make men comfortable. Only the old man, among the slaves, is of little use. Heard. Liang shook his head and said with a faint smile, since he has delivered it to the door himself, let him stay here. If he really thinks he can cover the sky with one hand, then give it a try. What? Disco was even more puzzled and puzzled. He didn't even know the meaning of Liang's words. In fact, Liang said these words to the silver-haired old man in front of him. Well. Inside the cage, the silver-haired old man frowned slightly, looking at Liang with a strange expression. In his right eye, there is a scar that runs through from top to bottom, leaving very obvious features. Of all the people, only his demeanor was the most natural, and he didn't feel too nervous. Pluto Rayleigh. The corners of Liang's mouth moved slightly, making a mouth shape. His smile continued. This person is the vice captain of Roger's ship, Pluto Rayleigh. Meeting Pluto Rayleigh here made Liang a little surprised, but then he also felt a little bit of anticipation. With him around, Rayleigh wants to save Kemi. Is it possible? You are. Rayleigh narrowed his eyes slightly, looked at Liang's face, and pondered for a moment. Familiar people, very familiar faces. But, just can't remember for a while. Introduce the others. Liang turned his eyes to the other slaves and said. My lord, this is a warrior from the giant clan. I don't know the name very well. However, his strength is tyrannical and can help people make a lot of labor. The one next to me is a princess from a subjugated country named Yina. She looks absolutely excellent, and she has the noble temperament of the princess, and her figure is even more impeccable. This one is the captain of a pirate group. It's a pity that he is still a slave and can definitely be auctioned for a good price. Quote. Disco introduced Liang one by one and flattered. This made it clear to the slaves in the cage that Liang was the top person in charge here. Mermaid Kemi, in a water tank, looked terrified. The last one is the finale. Mermaid Kemi. Disco looked at Kemi and explained with a smile. But Disco also discovered that Liang didn't listen to his explanation at all, but focused his eyes on the silver-haired old man, which made him full of puzzlement, but he didn't dare to ask more. Is there anything different about this old man? Or does he have undiscovered potentials and abilities? Goods that can sell at a good price are ignored by yourself. Thought here. Disco felt a chill in his heart, and cold sweat dripped from his forehead, and was about to explain. Let's go. Liang glanced at Rayleigh, turned around, and said lightly. Yes, my lord. Disco nodded quickly, not daring to make any other response. It's not easy. Inside the cage, Rayleigh looked at Liang's back and whispered. Old man, I can see that you are completely different from us. Who are you? Who is the young man who passed by just now? Is the leader of the heart here? The warrior of the giant clan asked with a rough voice. I'm just a bad old man. However, the young man in your mouth is not simple. He has a great background and can even make a splash in the sea. Rayleigh took a deep breath and his face gradually became solemn. Come to think of it, he should have recognized Liang's identity. Liang, who was about to leave, suddenly stopped again. At this time. Chapter 141-warning, 4/15 please customize. At this time. Liang looked back at Rayleigh and said with a faint smile, don't let me catch your outrageous behavior, otherwise, I can't help but kill you. After all, this population auction site already belongs to me. I can take the population auction from Doflamingo's hands, sure enough. Riley stretched out his hands and said slowly. Doflamingo. The pupils of the warriors of the giants shrank, and the rest of the people were also a little scared. Everyone knows that this population auction site belongs to Doflamingo, but it is tacit, and no one is publicizing it. But now, someone can actually take an auction house from Doflamingo's hands. Such energy is quite terrifying. When Li Ang was about to speak, a mechanical voice came from his head. Congratulations to the host, turn on the modifier, drink plus 999,999. Comprehend that 1,000 cups are not drunk. Open black lens bracket breakthrough novice close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket breakthrough entry close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket breakthrough proficiency close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket breakthrough master close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket breakthrough master close black lens bracket. ... Congratulations to the host, open the modifier, the coding value is plus 999,999. Open black lens bracket comprehend the hand of God close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket breakthrough novice close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket breakthrough entry close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket breakthrough proficiency close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket breakthrough master close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket breakthrough master close black lens bracket. ... All of a sudden, Li Ang has 2 more skills. However, these 2 abilities are also tasteless. Alcohol, coding. Li Ang laughed dumbly and shook his head. Sometimes the system is quite interesting. However, with his current strength, he doesn't need to overdo the system. Now, he possesses extreme speed, swordsmanship, extreme armament, knowledge, overlord, etc., and many extreme abilities, which have made his strength surpass this world for a long time. In terms of heads up, no one can win in Li Ang's hands. Even Kaido is no exception. Sir. Disco looked at Li Ang, who was stunned, and couldn't help but remind him. Li Ang, who had come back to his senses, looked at Rayleigh again, his eyes were inexplicable, and his body exuded a terrifying domineering look. Buzz. The domineering arrogance swept out, not covering, but targeted. For the domineering control of the overlord, Li Ang is already a consummate master. Hey, is it true? Rayleigh's pupils shrank, staring at Li Ang, a terrifying pressure on his body that made his scalp tingle. Overlord domineering, can it reach this level? It is more terrifying than the red-haired overlord. The person with the strongest overlord color, I am afraid that it is not the red-haired Shanks, but the young man in front of him. Even he, who was possessed of overlordism, admitted that his overlordism in his heyday was not as strong as 1/10 of Li Ang's. It can be called the world's first domineering. Suddenly, the overlord is restrained. Li Ang took a meaningful look at Rayleigh, turned his head, and said, "Let's go." "Yes, my lord." Disco could only nod and follow Li Ang, gradually leaving here. Inside the cage, Rayleigh's face became very heavy, and he fell into silence. Sure enough, it was the monster. ... P.S. Recommend a good book of elves, The Age of Elves, World Fusion, It's a Thief. In addition, let me say one thing, today's 15th big outbreak. Brothers, please subscribe to a monthly ticket for flower commentary. Chapter 142_Tianlong people, 5/15 please customize. Chambord Islands. On the street. 2 men and women in gorgeous clothes are walking towards the population auction step by step. They are wearing bubble hoods. The air of the world, in their opinion, has been polluted. At the same time, beside the 2, followed by a group of men in black clothes, the atmosphere became very depressed. Heaven, Tianlong people. A young woman slumped on the ground with weak legs, her face horrified. The world's highest noble, Tianlong people. All along, in the great waterway, the dragon people have been symbolized by absolute nightmares. Once the Tianlong people are provoked, the admiral of the navy will come, and not everyone can afford the consequences. Therefore, most people do not dare to disobey the orders of the Tianlong people. Brother Charles, what are we doing at the population auction? The woman wore sunglasses and covered her face with a silk scarf, but the delicate facial features of 017 were vaguely revealed, but she was very arrogant and did not take the world seriously. Her name is Zaluria Palace. I am missing some energy to travel. Come here to see if there are any slaves. I heard that a mermaid was caught here. As the eldest brother of Zaluria Palace, St. Charles snorted and said. He was so ugly that he was unique. Judging from their appearances, Zaluria Palace and St. Charles Rose are not like a pair of brothers and sisters with blood relationship. But in character, they are all so defiant. Mermaid. Zaluria Palace was a little curious, showed a smile, and said, since this is the case, we have enough people to come to the auction, why do we need to come to the population auction in person? You don't understand this, how intoxicating it is to see the mermaid in person. St. Charles Rose revealed a pair of coveted eyes and said. They drifted away and disappeared into the street. Suddenly, many residents dared to stand up, their expressions full of fear. The Tianlong people walked in front of them, which made their hearts almost unbearable. Tianlong people, they actually came here. Oh my God, what are they trying to do? I don't want to stay here anymore, I'm leaving here. If they are in a bad mood today, I'm afraid, we are all going to die. Quote. Everyone's fear of Tianlong people has gone deep into their bones and cannot be changed. On the other side of the Chambord Islands. All the straw hats are having a heated discussion. What? Kemi was caught by traffickers. Where? Yes, in the population auction. A pirate told the truth. Everyone, we must get Kemi out. Luffy's face was firm, and he immediately issued an order. Of course, Kemi is our partner. Sanji nodded, and seeing that Kemi was caught, he naturally couldn't stand idly by. Everyone agreed and rushed to the population auction in Area 1. At the same time, the gate of the population auction. A young man wearing a white speckled hat, holding a long knife, followed by a group of partners, gradually walked into the auction hall in front. Raising his head, he revealed his eyes, with special black bags under his eyes, 2 small golden earrings on each ear, and a mustache on his chin. Trafalgar Law. All the members of the Heart Pirates successfully entered the population auction in front. Captain, what are you doing here? Pandarin Babo asked, puzzled. Of course it's for the fun. The corners of Luo's mouth were slightly raised, revealing a meaningful smile, and he said, generally, this kind of scene cannot be seen outside the Chambord archipelago. The population auction site is exclusively for the Chambord archipelago. Chapter 142_Tianlong people, 5/15 please customize. And LT, 29 and GT. The corners of Luo's mouth were slightly raised, revealing a meaningful smile, and he said, generally, this kind of scene cannot be seen outside the Chambord archipelago. The population auction site is exclusively for the Chambord archipelago. Because, the Chambord Islands are a place covered by people. Human trafficking here is a normal phenomenon, and no navy will stop it. Everyone else has already arrived. Luo's eyes flickered and said. If nothing else, the pirate group in Supernova will also come to the auction. Being able to see the group of supernovas who were at the same time as him made him even more looking forward to it. There is more than one exit and more than one entrance in the population auction. At the same time that Luo's group entered the auction. The location of the other entrance. A red-haired, hedgehog-headed man with a dagger and a pistol on his chest, goggles, and a dark red coat, followed by a group of subordinates, walked step by step to the population auction in front of him. Eustace Kidd. Among the supernovas, the one with the highest bounty. Beside him, a man wearing a helmet with golden hair followed him and gradually walked into the front door. He is also a 12 supernova, named Kira. The rest of the people are somewhat unique in appearance, but their strength is quite tyrannical. I heard that this time, there is a mermaid auction. Kid grinned, revealing a touch of brilliance, and said 0. Mermaid. Everyone yearned for it, but they had never seen the legendary mermaid. It is their luck to see mermaids in the Chambord Islands. In addition to the mermaid, there are also those pirate groups that have also appeared here. This auction, perhaps, there will be some excitement. Kid's eyes flickered, with a sneer, said. He is a very authentic pirate. Unlike Luffy, Luo and others, Kid is the real embodiment of pirates in people's heads. He is selfish, powerful but cruel. He is a man with both ideals and ambitions, but he is more brutal in character. He is often angry about little things, and he doesn't have the accommodating capacity of Luffy. He once said that he killed everyone who laughed at him to find One Piece. Such a person can fully demonstrate what kind of guy a pirate is. From Kid's body, it can be seen completely. 90% of the pirates in the sea are some kind of characters. Boss, maybe, there are also Tianlong people. The rest of the crew took a deep breath and said. Tianlong people do appear frequently in the Chambord Islands. Even though they are pirates, the pressure in their hearts is still very heavy in the face of Tianlong people. Provoking the Tianlong people means letting the naval admiral be dispatched. Such consequences cannot be borne by any pirate group. Before the strength of the 4 emperors, provoking the Tianlong people would undoubtedly lead to death. Tien 0.2 Dragon Man. Kid's eyes flashed, and a bit of solemnity appeared on his face. The defiant, he didn't dare to say that he dared to do something to the Tianlong people. It is conceivable that the power of the Tianlong people has reached what level? Soon. Under the leadership of Kid, everyone successfully entered the population auction house. In the population auction venue, undercurrents are surging. Draco, Straw Hats, Trafalgaro, Kid, Hades Rayleigh, Mermaid, etc. Many people of different identities are concentrated in the same place. In addition to this group of people, there is another person who is sitting in the office of the auction house, waiting for the development of things with great interest. This person is Li Ang. Come on, everyone is here. Li Ang held the coffee in his hand and took a sip, seeing the domineering look that could completely cover the entire auction hall. Moreover, he can clearly know the existence of all the personnel in the auction hall. Chapter 143_auction starts, 6/15 ask for custom. Inside the auction. The crowd was crowded, and most of them were gorgeously dressed. In this case, only this group of people has the funds to buy the population. If it is a civilian, it is impossible to participate in this kind of auction. The Kid Pirates and the others were looking at the stage in front of them at the end on the left. The Heart Pirates and others were also sitting in the auditorium, waiting for the auction to start. The belated Straw Hats arrived at the auction smoothly. In the last position, everyone looked at the stage with a heavy expression, feeling very depressed. Xiaoba, are you sure this is here? Sanji said with a calm face. Kemi must have been auctioned here. Little 8 nodded and said solemnly. Since we can't act rashly, let's buy Kemi at a high price. Nami took a deep breath and said. Right now, on stage. A man was standing, holding the microphone in his hand, and said, I'll keep you all waiting. The monthly number 1 GR human auction will start soon. Of course, this is the host. Mr. Disco. One by one, shining lights shone on the stage, and a figure appeared. He spread his hands out, his face full of laughter, twirling excitedly. He is the host of this auction, Disco. Whoa! With the appearance of Disco, the audience was noisy and lively. This also means that the auction has kicked off. Disco is both the host and the top person in charge here. Of course. Before Li Ang came, he was the main person in charge. After Li Ang came, and reached a cooperative relationship with Doflamingo, the first person in charge here has a higher status than Doflamingo. At this time, Disco held the microphone in his hand and shouted excitedly. Hello everyone, I have prepared a lot of high-quality slaves for everyone this time. You are really lucky, there are super popular products this time. I sincerely wish you can buy satisfactory slaves diaresis. Disco waved his body and turned the lively atmosphere of the scene into a noisy home. Everyone at the scene seemed to have blood on their faces and looked very excited. There were two elderly people, a man and a woman, sitting next to them. They were gorgeously dressed and looked like nobles, with a strong eagerness on their faces, talking to each other. What do you want to buy this time? The last slave I bought lasted less than 10 days, so today I want to buy a young and strong Murloc man. I want to buy 2 or 3 young women to look good on. You really like young girls. What kind of cute young girls will appear? I'm really looking forward to it. Quote. The two did not hide anything, talking about their once unbearable words and deeds. Of course, almost everyone here has such a purpose, otherwise they would not be here. Disco shouted loudly again, then let's start the auction now. Commodity number 1 is from Shihai Troya, a family of vocal music, a proud pirate with almighty musical instruments. Pick up a musical instrument, a human music box that can play the music of life, and a rag that can clean up spotless cleaners, especially winemaking. A young and powerful man, 25 years old, male, 192 centimeters, 130 kilograms, his name is Bailong. Disco shouted and danced with music and sweeping the floor. This slave named Byron, all his advantages are infinitely enlarged and explained to the audience. Bailong raised his head, revealing his hopeless face, like a puppet, a walking corpse, his face is gray and lifeless. Chapter 143_auction starts, 6/15 please customize. NLT, 31 and GT. Bailong raised his head, revealing his hopeless face, like a puppet, a walking corpse, his face is gray and lifeless. This is the slave, the trained slave. Start the auction with the special price of 480,000 berry, then please raise your placards to bid. Disco was very excited and shouted loudly. 500,000. A middle-aged man held a sign number 82 and said. Mr. 82 put out a 500,000 bid. 520,000. Mr. 105 bid 520,000 to bid. ... On the other side, in the office. Li Ang was lying on the soft sofa, the excited voice of Disco came from his ears, his face was calm, his eyes narrowed slightly, and the domineering feeling spread. Under his perception, no one in the auction can escape his perception. Nami and Robin are here too. Unfortunately, now is not the time to meet. The corners of Li Ang's mouth were slightly raised, and he smiled lightly. Naturally, he knew the breath of Nami and Robin very clearly, and could tell them apart in an instant. Moreover, he can clearly perceive it. The Tianlong people are always here. With the appearance of the Tianlong people, the audience fell into a dead silence. Dragon people. Li Ang narrowed his eyes slightly, stretched his body and remained unmoved. Not to mention the pawns in the Tianlong people, even if it is the master of the Void Throne, and the Tianlong people's Wang Yimu comes in person, Li Ang will not have much emotional fluctuations. However, it is undeniable that the Tianlong people are indeed a big money master. They treat money like dung and don't bother about berry at all. In this case, it is completely possible to effectively use a to smash the Tianlong people. In Li Ang's view, the two Tianlong people who entered the venue were not really smart people, but rather self-righteous and arrogant fools. In the auction, because of the arrival of Tianlong people, the atmosphere of the scene was pulled to the extreme, and the whole atmosphere exploded. A captain of a pirate group, because he couldn't stand the insults of slaves, chose suicide after death. Disco had to come up with the finale merchandise. Next, let's take a closer look. This is a once-in-a-century product. She can swim in the sea without suffocating due to lack of oxygen, and she can bring people unlimited viewing. Besides, her species is also quite a scarce resource. It will also save face if you use it for viewing. I think everyone will be interested. It's good. Yes, this product is about to kick off for everyone. Disco was all smiles, excited, and shouted, "This commodity is, merman." Whoa! Under the promotion of the staff, a fish tank appeared in the eyes of people. Mermaid Kemi, in the fish tank, with an explosive collar, looked at the crowd in despair. Human, mermaid. Everyone fell into silence, staring blankly at the living mermaid woman in the transparent glass in the water tank, her eyes gradually enlarged. The scene was completely boiling. My God, it's actually a mermaid, really a mermaid. I decided, at all costs, I must buy it. This mermaid girl can be used for viewing, and it is also very face-saving in the living room. Quote. Everyone was excited, and seeing the appearance of the mermaid, their whole bodies rolled with blood. NLT, 32 and GT. Chapter 144_unrest, 7/15 please customize. Where Sanji and the others stood, everyone's faces were very heavy and angry. Nami looked at the trapped Kemi with a firm expression. She must photograph it. Nami, who is carrying 200 million bellies, is confident and confident. In her opinion, 200 million berry can completely defeat many competitors, allowing them to take Kemi smoothly. Dong dong dong. Disco tapped the hammer, motioned everyone to be quiet, and said, "It's been a long time since the mermaid auction, and everyone should be very interested. So, how much should you start from? Well, let's start, first." Just when Disco was about to announce the final low price, his voice was planned, and the person who interrupted was the heavenly dragon, Saint Charles. 500 million. Charles Rose Saint stood up directly, stretched out his left hand, and directly said a shocking price. The whole place was silent. Disco's face was full of astonishment, and Nami, who was originally confident, was so shocked that she was unable to grab the number plate in her hand and fell to the ground. The Straw Hat Gang, all the people present, Sanji, Chopper, Frankie, Papik, Hachi, all had expressions of astonishment on their faces. "I'll pay 500 million berry." St. Charles Rose's face was calm, and he didn't put 500 million berry in his eyes at all, as if he was stating a very small matter. 500 million. No way, the opponent is too strong. Quote. Some people who originally planned to photograph the mermaid sighed. 540. They slumped on their chairs helplessly, and this price directly crushed them beyond competition. 500 million. Nami couldn't believe it, she was no longer able to compete. This huge berry crushed her whole body. Papik showed endless sadness and cried, "Kemi, Kemi." Xiaoba gritted his teeth, his face full of grief and anger, but there was nothing he could do. Straw Hats, there is nothing they can do. On the stage, Disco quickly recovered and tried his best to maximize his interests. But unfortunately, this price is already the maximum limit, and no one bids anymore. Since that's the case, then I'll officially announce that the mermaid Kemi was photographed by St. Charles for 500 million bells. Disco shouted loudly, looking very excited. Boom. There was a loud noise at the door. Including the entire auction house, I felt the ground shaking and the smoke billowing. Luffy and Zoro were rough, breaking the wall and appearing at the scene. They were confused for a while, when they noticed Kemi on the stage. Without any thought, Luffy stepped forward and shouted, "Kemi." Xiaoba gritted his teeth and went straight up. It grabbed Luffy and persuaded Luffy. With a collar on Kemi's neck, they must not act rashly. But Luffy, who was angry, didn't listen at all. When blocking Luffy, Xiaoba inadvertently revealed the remaining 4 hands. Although he stopped Luffy, his identity as a murloc was also revealed. Immediately, the whole scene was chaotic. How could he have 6 arms? It's a murloc, get out of the way, don't come close. Who knows what virus is on the murlocs? Get out of here and don't appear here. Quote. Almost all of the people who participated in the auction avoided Xiaoba's place, with disgusted expressions on their faces. In the Chambord Islands, both mermen and murlocs are hated beings. Suddenly. Boom. With a loud bang, Xiaoba slowly fell to the ground, blood spitting out from the corners of his mouth. Behind Xiaoba, the heavenly dragon named Charles Rose was holding a pistol in his hand. He looked at Xiaoba, who fell to the ground with excitement, and said excitedly, "I caught a murloc. This was not caught by Wa Bailey. I caught it myself. I am so happy." Luffy's face turned gloomy. Straw hats. Everyone's faces are black. Anger. Invisibility enveloped their entire hearts. Luffy stared at St. Charles Rose, took his steps, clenched his fists and moved forward. Chapter 144-Unrest, 7/15 please customize. NLT, 33 and GT. Luffy stared at St. Charles Rose, took his steps, clenched his fists and moved forward. However, Luffy's feet were tightly grasped by Hachi, who still had one breath left, and he didn't let go at all. Of pain on his face. "Wait a minute, no, don't be angry, it's me who screwed up. No matter who is killed in front of you, you can't shoot at Tianlong people, didn't you promise me?" Looking at Hachi's expression, Luffy's pupils shrank. Unprecedented anger covered his heartstrings. But he calmed down and stood silently. He put Xiaoba's hand lightly on his chest and stood up. "Dead fish man, I was shot and said so much nonsense, it's really hot." With a face full of impatience, Charles Rose pointed the gun at Xiaoba's position again. But Luffy stood in front of Hachi without a word. He slowly took his steps, getting closer to St. Charles Rose. "What do you mean by that look?" St. Charles Rose shouted with anger on his face. Luffy ignored St. Charles Rose's words and walked over. One after another dodged the bullet attacks of St. Charles. In the end, a punch was thrown heavily. Boom. Charles Rose Saint was directly blasted by Luffy and fell to the ground unconscious. Silence. No one could have imagined that the Tianlong people would actually be beaten. This is a very serious matter. Damn it, the Tianlong people were actually beaten. This is terrible. I have to leave here quickly, the Admiral is coming. I don't want to die. Hurry up and get out of here. Go, get out of my way and run outside. Run away. Quote. Those who participated in the auction were no longer in the mood. Their faces were full of fear, and they hurried to the gate, took the fastest speed, and left here. I saw that Luffy dared to attack the Tianlong people. Many guards were besieging the Straw Hats, but they couldn't help each other. Boom, boom, boom. The guards fell to the ground one by one, and the guards brought by the Tianlong people were vulnerable. As the audience left, the scene also became empty. But there are still a small number of people left. Among them, one side is the Heart Pirates of Trafalgaro. On the other side are Kid and members of the Kid Pirates. Among the 11 supernovas, almost half of them gathered here, divided into 3 tyrannical pirate groups. At the same time, Shalulia Palace was full of anger, seeing that her brother was actually knocked down. She held a gun, walked to the water tank, and pointed at Kemi. Kemi's eyes gradually became desperate and terrified. Shalulia Palace sneered and said, "Everything is because of you. If that's the case, then you should die." Don't. The eyes of the Straw Hat Gang widened, and Nami cried out. Buzz. Just this moment. A terrifying aura wafted out. Ah! Suddenly, Shalulia Palace's eyes turned white and she lost consciousness. With a thump, she fell to the ground, unconscious. Everyone was stunned. The Straw Hats, the Heart Pirates, the Kid Pirates, and the others stiffened. Immediately after. Tread, tread, tread. A footstep sounded gradually in their ears. In the corner. Disco forced himself to calm down, whispered to the people next to him, and hurriedly said, Quick, go and inform Lord Liang. And LT, 34 and GT. Chapter 145_Rayleigh, do you dare to move? 8/15 for custom. Outside the auction house, a group of navies have surrounded it. And the news that Straw Hat Luffy beat the Tianlong people also spread throughout the Chambord archipelago. This also means that the naval general is about to come. Therefore, many pirates are hurriedly preparing to leave the Chambord, Earth Islands. Dive to Fishman Island, ready to enter the New World. But there are also individual pirates who are not afraid of death and still stay on the island. The 11 supernovas are now at the time of their strongest confidence. They, who have never seen the strength of the generals, are completely fearless, and most of them choose to stay on the island. What general, can you be stronger than me? Some arrogant pirates spoke out. When they have seen the strength of the general, they will not say so. But at present, they have been blinded by their self-righteous mentality. At this time, inside the auction, go and tell Lord Liang. Disco was nervous and hurriedly ordered to a younger brother. No need. Suddenly, Liang's figure appeared beside Disco and said lightly, I'm already here. Lord Liang, something is bad. Disco looked terrified and looked at Liang excitedly, saying. Seeing Liang's appearance, he seemed to see the backbone. As long as Lord Liang appears, this matter will definitely be settled. Fine. Fortunately, Lord Liang is the owner of the auction house. Otherwise, with his own ability, he really cannot settle the current situation. I know. Liang looked at the scene ahead and nodded. He knew the scene of the Tianlong man being stunned. As for why he didn't come to the rescue. Of course, what did the casualties of the Tianlong people have to do with him? However, it is unforgivable for this group of people to make trouble at the auction. Front. Charles Rose Saint, who was knocked out by Luffy's punch, fell to the ground with a red and swollen mark on his face. As a Tianlong person, Charles Rose was very lack of exercise at ordinary times, which made his physique very weak and could be knocked down with an easy punch. 3 pirates, 1 Rayleigh, and 1 giant warrior. Liang narrowed his eyes slightly and glanced at the environment at the scene. At the same time, his gaze was fixed on the body of the celestial dragon woman in Zalulia Palace. Overlord is domineering. Just knocked her out. That being the case, in this chaotic situation. For a while, Liang had a plan in his heart, and the corner of his mouth evoked a meaningful arc. Sir. Disco stepped back with some fear, looking at the group of enemies, said. You step back, I'll take care of it here. Liang's mouth moved slightly and said slowly. Yes, my lord. Disco led a group of younger brothers and silently chose to retreat. Boom. A loud bang. The wall cracked, and a huge giant warrior stepped out of the wall. Finally, escape. The giant warriors shouted with excitement on their faces. Tread, tread, tread. Behind the giant warriors, the sound of footsteps became more and more obvious. In a dimly lit environment, I saw an old man with silver hair in a white shirt walking out of the tattered wall step by step. He wore a pair of glasses and looked ahead sharply with a smile. Old man, you are really not easy. The giant warrior looked at Rayleigh beside him and said in admiration. The terrifying aura just now made him shudder a little, and goosebumps appeared all over his body. He had absolutely no confidence in defeating the old human being in front of him. Chapter 145_Rayleigh, do you dare to move? Please customize on 8/15 and GT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. And LT, 35 and GT. He had absolutely no confidence in defeating the old human being in front of him. Smiled. Riley smiled, calmly. Immediately, he turned his eyes to the position ahead, and saw that Xiao Ba was injured. His face became a little gloomy, and then he saw the Straw Hat group, and his expression was slightly relieved. Little 8, this is his savior. Xiao Ba, are you all right? Rayleigh walked step by step and asked worriedly. Rayleigh, I'm fine. After Xiaoba saw Rayleigh, his heavy heart gradually dropped and he breathed a sigh of relief. Now that Rayleigh has appeared, they naturally won't have too many accidents. Quick, go and save Kemi. Little 8 looked at Luffy and hurriedly said. Sauron, Sanji. Luffy nodded and shouted. The 3 of them unanimously rushed to the position of the water tank in front of them. The Murloc Kemi, who was imprisoned in the water tank, was excitedly knocking the fish tank. Don't move. Suddenly, a group of men in black appeared and stopped the 3 of Luffy. It's so annoying. Luffy gritted his teeth and said angrily, these guys, there are too many people to fight. Let me come. 0. Rayleigh's eyes flickered, his footsteps moved, and he walked forward. A terrifying aura gradually filled his body. Overlord Domineering is about to unfold. For a moment, an inexplicable aura enveloped him. Suddenly, Rayleigh's domineering arrogance gradually collapsed and disappeared without a trace. His pupils shrank, and he looked around. This situation is unprecedented. He has been in the sea for so many years, but he has never seen his domineering arrogance to be disintegrated. It was simply so shocking to him. Rayleigh. Xiaoba was a little puzzled, and there was a trace of blood on the corner of his mouth. It's all right. Rayleigh took a deep breath and forcibly suppressed the throbbing in his heart. He also finally discovered the source of the momentum just now. Looking around, Riley saw a familiar figure. Liang was looking at Riley with a smile. Sure enough, it's you. Rayleigh's mouth was slightly opened, and he whispered to himself, his heart was heavy. That momentum was terrifying. Even he did not dare to say that he could defeat the opponent. Moreover, especially the opponent's record, is almost above everyone's head in the sea, including him, and even Whitebeard, no exception. Liang. Rayleigh's eyes flickered, his face was full of depression, and he didn't dare to act rashly. Under Liang's gaze, Rayleigh's heart was under heavy pressure. The 2 old rivals, Warring States and Garp, naturally knew the strength of the other party. But even these 2 terrifying old opponents, they joined forces, and under the siege of the 2 generals, they still couldn't help Liang in front of him. One can imagine how terrifying Liang's strength is. Thought here. Rayleigh involuntarily took a half step back, his mind tense, like a frightened cat. In order to prevent Liang from suddenly attacking, he had to adjust his state to the extreme. Otherwise, if Liang makes a move, he will be suppressed to the point of being unable to fight back. But in fact, even if he is serious, the enemy he faces is Liang, he will not help. Failure is certain, but how long it will last is unknown. Let's go, we shouldn't stay here for long. Rayleigh whispered to the crowd around him. Even he didn't dare to stay here, let alone this group of rookie pirates. These people, including him, stay here, only to die. And LT, 36 and GT. Chapter 146 _ 1 person shocked the audience. 9/15 for custom. But we're going to rescue Kemi. Xiaoba gritted his teeth and said with a depressed face. It's all 3 of them now. I, for some reason, can't do it. If I do, things will be more troublesome. Rayleigh took a deep breath and said slowly. Hearing this, Xiaoba was also silent, and he had no intention of letting Liuli take action. Because. Rayleigh raised his head, his eyes filled with emotion, and said, here, there is a monster that makes me feel a lot of pressure. So, if you can, leave here as soon as possible. Save people and leave immediately. Rayleigh, are you stressed out? Xiaoba was startled and lost his voice. Yes. Rayleigh nodded, looking inexplicable. Immediately, even Frankie, Yusobu and the others were startled, and their faces were horrified. This is Roger's deputy captain. It can make him feel more pressure. What kind of enemy should he be afraid of? Let's go quickly. Yusobu was a little timid, and said quickly, rescue Kemi quickly, and we will leave here. As soon as possible, let Luffy and the others do it as soon as possible. I'm afraid it's not realistic to save people. Rayleigh's eyes narrowed, looking forward, said. Front. Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji had already knocked down all the men in black, and there was only a water tank in front of them. Kemi was beating the water tank and responded fiercely. Kimmy, I'll save you right now. Luffy shouted, his expression full of excitement. Luffy, don't be impulsive. Zoro took a deep breath. He found a terrifying thing. A person appeared in the auction hall, so he had to stop his current actions. Sauron, don't stop me. Luffy didn't care and hurriedly said. Look first, that man over there, who is he? Zoro's throat was dry, and he pointed to a figure on the other side and said. Sanji looked around and saw a young man with a smile. He looked harmless to humans and animals, but his scalp was numb and his lips trembled. He lost his voice. Yes, it's him, how could he be here? Well. Luffy had some changes, and his mood was heavy. He still has self-awareness. What kind of enemies can be dealt with and what kinds of enemies can't be dealt with, he is very clear in his heart. Better than himself, he can fight to the death. But if he is much stronger than himself, he will not be able to fight. The other side. The members of the Kid Pirates, plus Kid, were sitting on the seats, looking at the scene ahead. When he saw Rayleigh, Kid's expression changed a little. There's an incredible character here. Boss, who is he? The rest of the crew asked. The momentum just now, if I guessed correctly, it is the domineering look of the Overlord. Kid took a deep breath, his tone a little heavy. Even he doesn't have this kind of terrifying ability. In the lower left corner. The members of the Heart Pirates are concentrated here. Pluto Rayleigh. Luo pupil shrank, looked at Rayleigh, and said in a low voice. Captain, that person over there seems to be very familiar. Pandaren Beppo was a little nervous and looked to another location. There, a young man was standing. Yes, it's him. The rest of the crew's eyes gradually enlarged and lost their voices. In an instant, they recognized the identity of this young man. The background was so big that it made them shudder and numb their scalps. Hey, is it true? Chapter 146_1 person shocked the audience. 9/15 for custom. And GT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. And LT, 37 and GT. Hey, is it true? Luo swallowed his saliva, a little unbelievable. How could he be here? It's unlikely. He actually appeared here, and what position does he stand for? Captain, he seems to be the person in charge here. I just saw that the person named Disco respects him. Come to think of it, they should have a cooperative relationship. The rest of the crew pondered for a moment and said in horror. In this way, I am afraid that this group of people will suffer. What? Luo was startled, his eyes turned quickly, and he looked around, looking for a way to escape from here. Here, I actually met the legendary Li Yang. After seeing Li Yang, Luo had an ominous feeling in his heart. Now, this ominous premonition is growing stronger. If you don't go, you have no chance to go. Quick, get out of here. Luo immediately stood up and said. Captain, it's too late. Some of the crew shook their heads, their lips trembled, and said. Why? Luo frowned and asked. Because. A crew member looked out from the perforation in the wall, and said with difficulty, outside, it has been completely surrounded by the Navy, we simply escaped easily. Navy so fast. Luo's eyes rolled, and suddenly, Tianlong people, no wonder, the efficiency of the Navy is so fast. If the Tianlong people were beaten, they will naturally be ready to fight. Moreover, the general is about to arrive here. Zero. Admiral. Everyone was a little stunned. Although there was huge pressure in their hearts, they didn't have that kind of fear. After all, they never felt the sense of dominance brought by the general. The pirates who just went to sea are blindly confident, so that they don't take the world in their eyes. When they really collide with the general, they will understand that although human beings are the same species, they do not live on the same level at all. Besides, they will know more clearly how terrifying Liang's strength is. The pirates, who were originally disdainful of Liang, will naturally know exactly what level of terror Liang is standing on when he fights with the general. Kid, I always feel that the young man over there, it is more unfathomable than this silver-haired old man, especially the threat he brings. He is a bit like. Kira, who was wearing a helmet, spoke in a low tone, pointing to the voice of a young man not far away, and said tentatively. You said yes, Liang. Kid took a closer look, his pupils shrank, he was shocked, and blurted out. That's right, it's him. Kira's throat rolled, and her voice gradually became hoarse. He actually appeared here. Kid's mood gradually became heavy, but he still maintained his self-confidence. They, who have never played against the generals, became one of the 12 supernovas along the way and attracted much attention. This allows them to establish absolute confidence in their own strength, and naturally they will not easily think that they are no match for the opponent. Kid is still very confident and can leave here calmly. In the sight of everyone. A silhouette walks 4.0 out. Lord Liang. Disco looked at Liang's back, exhaled heavily, and looked adored. With Liang appearing, this time the matter can be completely calmed down. It's something he can't do at all. He couldn't imagine how much things would have changed today without Liang. The auction house will be turned upside down. At this time, Liang gradually walked to the stage, smiled at the people in front, and said, Everyone, welcome you to my chassis. But it seems that you are not very friendly to me, and you have broken down this place. Okay, next, let's talk. Compensation. Silence. No one dared to speak. Even Rayleigh, at this moment, can only choose to remain silent. The huge pressure was on everyone's shoulders, making them unable to move, and their spines were wet with cold sweat. Chapter 147_effortlessly false 10/15 please customize. Liang. Nami and Robin looked at each other and felt a little relieved. If it is Liang, then there is no big problem. They were on the scene, the only ones who could maintain a calm demeanor. Not even Rayleigh was in a more relaxed mood than the two of them. But then again, what is the person in charge? Is Liang the person in charge here? Think of this. Both Nami and Robin were taken aback. Front. Liang's eyes flickered. With a smile, he glanced at Robin and Nami with a meaningful smile. Suddenly, both Robinami and Robinami understood and didn't speak. They believed that Liang would not embarrass them. At this time, Liang's eyes focused on Rayleigh's body and smiled. Unsurprisingly, you should be the legendary pirate, Hades Rayleigh, right? In the legend, Liang, who was able to suppress the naval headquarters by himself. My name is not worth mentioning. Rayleigh held a knife and smiled slowly. Oh 8. The pressure on his expression was extremely heavy, and it was hard to hide it on his face. With his current strength, he can be evenly matched with a general, and it is basically impossible to defeat the general. Therefore, in the face of Liang, who can compete with the two generals, plus Karp and the two top naval high-level figures in the Warring States period, he is still not at a disadvantage. In the end, Liang left calmly, forcing the Warring States to lower his head. This kind of terrifying figure is far from what Rayleigh can contend with. Naturally, Rayleigh's heart was under pressure. Let's talk about the compensation. If the compensation is proper, I will not embarrass you. If the compensation is not enough, then I am sorry. I cannot let you take the goods. Liang walked to the side of the fish tank, glanced at Kemi, and said. You. Luffy gritted his teeth, burning with anger, staring at Liang. On the side, Zoro and Sanji quickly grabbed Luffy to prevent Luffy from suddenly attacking. In this case, things would really explode. Once the battle broke out, no one at the scene could suppress Liang. This is something that Sauron knows very well in his heart. The image that Li Ang's sword energy had directly suppressed his courage and disappeared, reappeared in his mind again. Luffy, don't be impulsive, there is room for negotiation. If you do it, then we all have to collide with him here. We will all die here. Zoro leaned against Luffy's ear and said solemnly. After hearing this, Luffy's mood gradually calmed down, gnashing his teeth, but there was nothing he could do. It's the first time I've seen a lovely mermaid. It would be too miserable if she was trapped in a water tank. Originally, I planned to let her go, but seeing how confident you are, Rayleigh, I'll take it back. The idea is gone. Quote. After all, you are the deputy captain of the One Piece ship. You must be so confident. You must have a reason. So, I want to see, what would you do? Li Ang looked at Rayleigh and said with a smile. Rayleigh was very depressed and said, Your Excellency, it doesn't seem to be this kind of indiscriminate killing of innocent people. I think, you shouldn't be able to do such a thing, right? Are you challenging my bottom line? Corners of Li Ang's mouth twitched slightly, and he laughed. I have killed more than 10,000 naval pirates. Do you think that I will care about this life? What do you want to do? Rayleigh frowned, took a deep breath, and said. Li Ang did not speak. Chapter 147_strongly false 10/15 please customize. NLT, 39 and GT. Li Ang did not speak. The entire scene fell silent again. No one dared to speak at this time. Even the arrogant kid had to endure the restlessness in his heart, choose to calm down, and quietly watch the trend of things. Luo and his crew also sat in their original positions, motionless. Surrounded by the navy outside, they did not dare to act rashly. But here, they are more restrained. Once Li Ang is aware of their existence, if they are in a bad mood, that is when they will suffer. In the case of compensation. Li Ang glanced at the mess everywhere, pondered for a moment, and said, if the wall is pierced, it will cost 50 million berry to repair it. Also, these chairs are something. The chairs are all made of the strongest wood in the world. But they were damaged by you. I'll give you a little cheaper. If there are 22 damaged pieces in total, 200 million berry will be enough. My price is quite fair. In addition to these, the mermaid Kemi has to spend 500 million berry. Originally, the stupid pig of the Tianlongren used this price, but you stopped it. So, I have transferred the original price to you. Quote. Finally. Li Ang said, adding up the front and back, it will cost you 1 billion bells. I won't give you any more. Everyone is in the Chambord archipelago. Look up and see, there is no need to be too heartless. How much did you say? Rayleigh's eyes widened, his face dull, and said. Billion berry. If he had this wealth, he wouldn't have to sell himself. This wealth, to him, is an astronomical amount. Of course. Back then, he didn't care about this Bailey at all, but now he has no channels to get him so many Baileys. 1 billion berry. Luo, Kid and the others all gasped and looked inexplicable. The deputy captain of the One Piece ship, the legendary pirate, Pluto Rayleigh was actually cheated like this. How can this picture make them always feel that 883 is not realistic? Even the legendary pirates were deceived. However, Li Ang in front of him does have this qualification. What? Don't you think 1 billion berry is too little? Coincidentally, I think so too. If it's 1.5 billion berry, I can't let you get out of here. Li Ang laughed dumbly, looked at Rayleigh, and said, I just said, the legendary pirate Hades Rayleigh must be a fair person. 1.5 billion berry, that's it. At this time, Rayleigh's face has completely collapsed, his lips are shaking, obviously angry. But he didn't dare to act rashly. Li Ang's terrifying strength suppressed the audience. If he was alone, he really didn't have the courage to collide with Li Ang. If you really want to go to war with Li Ang, I am afraid that he has to gather the previous crew members, and the Captain Roger has not died, and all the people are at their peak before they can fight. But now, when he is alone, to fight against Liang, he always feels that he will be hung with a hammer. A billion berry. Nami herself was startled, her pink lips trembled. Robin's beautiful eyes flashed a bit of brilliance, and whispered to himself, "This is also very similar to his style, just like when he deceived us." Now, even the deputy captain of the One Piece ship, the legendary big pirate Hades Rayleigh, it's corrupted, and this picture makes people dare not look directly. Quote. Chapter 148 The Aggrieved Rayleigh, 11/15 please customize. This is the legendary pirate. Luo couldn't help but laugh, but the pressure of his mood could not dissipate. Even the legendary pirates have been corrupted like this, let alone them. But looking at it, when the legendary pirate in front of him, Pluto Rayleigh, the deputy captain of the One Piece ship, seemed to be quite interesting when he was blackmailed by others. Such a scene is quite rare. Kid and many of the crew were motionless, staring blankly ahead. Silence. A long time. Rayleigh came back to his senses and said, "Is it too expensive for 1.5 billion berry?" "It's not expensive or expensive, unless you think the price is cheap. You know, all the slaves in my place have been influenced by you. The people on the scene were also driven away. Who will pay for it?" Liang waved his hand and said with a faint smile, 1.5 billion berry, nothing less. Less, no one here wants to leave. 1.5 billion. Rayleigh's eyes gradually darkened, lost in thought. Of course he didn't have this amount of berry. However, Shachi has 100% of this berry, and she still has a lot of savings. However, whether Shachi will take it out is a question. It's just that Xiaoba once saved his life, and he must not stand idly by. If there is no compensation of 1.5 billion berry, it means that he will collide with Liang. The final result was obvious, he would be hanged and beaten by Liang, and he was afraid that he would lose his face. Good. Rayleigh took a deep breath and nodded solemnly, 1.5 billion berry, I'll give it to you, now, let them get out of here first. I'll keep my word and never perfunctory. Of course I trust you, you are the king of the underworld, Rayleigh. Moreover, even if you don't fulfill your promise, I will have a way to find you. At that time, this berry will be tripled to repay. The corners of Liang's mouth were slightly raised, and he said with a smile. Never break your promise. Rayleigh's pupils shrank, and he did not doubt Liang's words at all. If he repents, perhaps, he will really be caught by Liang. At that time, if there is no triple repayment, he will be forced to fight against Liang. The result, of course, speaks for itself. Even, the legendary pirates bowed their heads diaresis. Nami covered her pink lips and had a clearer understanding of Liang's energy. There are only a handful of people in this sea who can single-handedly overwhelm the legendary pirate Hades Rayleigh, and Liang is the first. Not even the Navy headquarters could make Rayleigh bow his head. However, Liang can do things that the Navy headquarters can't do. Liang. Luo's eyes twinkled brightly, and the pressure in his heart was very heavy. Since Liang is the person in charge here, he has a lot of things in mind. Doflamingo, what is the relationship with Liang? If it is a cooperative relationship, then he is in big trouble. After all, he escaped by himself. If caught by Doflamingo, it will inevitably turn over the teaching. Okay, then, the Navy outside will be handed over to you. Since Rayleigh has promised to give me 1.5 billion berry, I will not embarrass you anymore. Liang narrowed his eyes slightly and smiled. 1.5 billion berry, just got it, simple and easy, no pressure. If you can't give it, think about it, the world government should be happy to receive the head of a legendary pirate, the deputy captain of the Pirate King. This head, worth 1.5 billion, should not be a problem. Liang thought so in his heart and smiled even more. Come to think of it, Rayleigh didn't even know what Liang was thinking. If he knew, he might not be able to be so calm. If it's a normal person, that's fine. But Liang is a monster that even the headquarters of the Navy fears, let alone Rayleigh himself. Even if you give him 2 more, he may not be able to fight against Liang. Chapter 148 The aggrieved Rayleigh, 11/15 please customize. But Liang is a monster that even the headquarters of the Navy fears, let alone Rayleigh himself. Even if you give him 2 more, he may not be able to fight against Liang. Kemi. Luffy gave Liang a vicious look, walked quickly to the fish tank, and broke the fish tank. Luffy. Kemi burst into tears, pointed to his neck, and said, "This thing, it will explode." Disco, take her collar off. Liang glanced at the disco and said, "When you receive money from people, you naturally have to do things for people." Although he knew that Rayleigh had a way to untie the collar, if he let the other party do it himself, then his shopkeeper would be a little remiss. "Yes, my lord." Disco came to Kemi, holding a pair of keys. Under the terrified expression of Kemi, he quickly opened the collar on his neck. The mermaid worth 500 million berry disappeared right in front of her eyes. Disco didn't feel much loss in his heart, but his admiration for Liang became more intense. Originally it was only worth 500 million. Even if the entire auction house was rebuilt, it would not exceed the construction price of 100 million Bailey, including materials. But with such damage and some slaves, Liang was forced to auction the price of 1.5 billion, which made Disco not worship. Without Liang, this place would have been reduced to ruins. "Remember to take care of the Navy outside, I don't want them to affect my business." Liang waved his hand, sat on the chair, and said lightly, "Diaresis, little 8, you come with me." Riley said to Hachi and the others. The remaining 3 members of the pirate group fought against the Navy soldiers outside. The general has not arrived yet, so these navies now have no pressure on the 3 pirates. Before Robin and Nami left, a voice came from their ears. "I'll find you in 2 days." Immediately, the 2 women turned their heads, saw the smile on Liang's face, blushed slightly, and quickly left here. And Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, plus Kid Pirates, Heart Pirates and others, formed a group, ready to go out at the same time and fight against the Navy. Rayleigh, 1.5 billion. Liang looked at Rayleigh's back, the corners of his mouth moved slightly, and he smiled. "Got it." Rayleigh coughed and almost vomited blood, feeling aggrieved, said, "I really don't know where he provoked him. As for start with 1 billion at every turn. Do you really think I am the me of the past Qian Jiao Jiao? I don't know how many berries are left in Shachi. If it's not enough, it's troublesome." The more he thought about it, the more complicated and irritable Rayleigh's mood became. "Unexpectedly, I came here to sell myself and make a little money." In the end, not only did not earn a cent, but on the contrary, it was posted on the back of 1.5 billion berg. But Liang, this monster is also scary enough. Just now, he should have used the domineering arrogance to defeat my tyrannical arrogance. This kid. Rayleigh took a deep breath, feeling extremely heavy. Under his leadership, Kemi, Nami, Robin and others gradually left here. In the auction room at the moment, there are still 3 members of the Straw Hats, plus the Kid Pirates and the Heart Pirates. The population, large and small, is only a few dozen people, not a lot. Outside, there are already thousands of navies surrounding the auction house. And LT, 42 and GT. Chapter 149 Zaluria Palace, 12/15 please customize. Everyone, please go out. The Navy is here to find you, not me. If you fight in my place, there will be more damage, and the price of compensation will be more than 1.5 billion. Liang looked at Luffy and the others in front and said lightly, "Go." Luo kicked his feet and quickly left here with his companions. Facing Liang, he always felt that his heart was about to jump out. The same is true for Kid. As soon as Liang's words fell, he quickly led the crew out of the auction, for fear that he would die here in the next second. Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji didn't turn back, followed the people in front and left the auction. At this time, there was no one in the auction hall. "Sir, what should we do? Do we want to inform the boss?" Disco stood beside Liang and asked in a low voice. "What should we do? If the Navy dares to take action here, then just kill them all. If they don't take the initiative to provoke us, we don't need to fight them." Liang said very easily. He didn't care about the existence of the Navy at all. Heard. Disco took a deep breath, and respected Liang even more in his heart, saying, "Your Excellency is very true, we only need to watch the battle between the pirates and the Navy." Blink of an eye, he saw these fainted people on the ground and asked, "What about these people?" "These people?" Liang narrowed his eyes slightly, glanced at the scene, and really found a lot of people who were shocked and fainted by Rayleigh's overlord color. Most of them are rich people. Those with weak constitutions, under the shock of Rayleigh's overlord color, fainted directly. Just let them sleep here slowly, and when they wake up, we don't need to intervene. Liang's eyes looked around, and finally settled on a person's body. The corners of his mouth were slightly raised, and he said meaningfully, "Go and see the battlefield outside, and always report the situation to me." "Yes, my lord." Disco nodded and immediately arranged for a few younger brothers to accompany him. He walked out of the auction floor and walked to a hidden position, always paying attention to the changes in the battlefield. For Liang's words, he has always maintained 100% obedience. After all, I saw with my own eyes that the legendary pirates bowed their heads in front of Liang. This kind of scene made his heart boil with enthusiasm, and he could not wait to shout and dance for Liang on the spot. But after thinking about it, he still felt that he was insignificant. Liang is a man who can't even hold his head up in the Navy's main EPUB department, so how could he have emotional waves because of the suppression of a legendary pirate? In Liang's eyes, these things are nothing but trivial matters. With the departure of Disco, the scene fell into a dark atmosphere again. Inside the auction, Liang walked to the broken water tank step by step. On the way, he stopped, and beside his feet, lay a very ugly man with a red and swollen scar on his face, and even his front teeth were broken. This person, of course, was the heavenly dragon who was stunned by Luffy's punch, St. Charles Rose. Tianlong people, what a waste. Liang's mouth moved slightly, and he shook his head lightly. He kicked St. Charles away and flew to the edge of the wall, but the other party was still unconscious. Sleep like a dead pig, really adhering to the temperament of Tianlong people, too lazy to be unique. Liang's face was calm, and he originally planned to use the overlord color to stun the opponent. But the quality of sleep on the other side made him amazed. Immediately after, Liang's expression gradually became wonderful, his eyes flickered with brilliance, and the arrogance of seeing and hearing spread to the extreme, covering all areas within a kilometer. The battle between the Navy and the pirates outside has already started, and there is no surprise. Chapter 149_Shah Lulia Palace, 12/15 please customize. NLT, 43 and GT. The battle between the Navy and the pirates outside has already started, and there is no surprise. This group of navies was not enough to be the enemy of the Straw Hats and others, and they were defeated one after another. "Luffy, be careful, fight quickly." Sanji's face was solemn and he shouted. Sauron used tyrannical swordsmanship to walk in the Navy group with ease. With every move, he can take away dozens of people. Kid was even more terrifying, using the ability of the magnet fruit to absorb everyone's weapons, creating a huge fist and bombarding it down. Boom! A loud bang. The ground trembled and dust fluttered. Slaughterhouse. Luo spread his palms, and a circle enveloped the audience. With one knife cut, a person is divided in half, but there is no death. Damn it, I actually saw my ass. What's the situation? He's a death surgeon, Trafalgaro. His ability is very strange, everyone be careful. Quote. The Navy was in chaos and attacked Luo. But obviously, Luo's ability is too domineering, and this group of navy has no way at all. All of them were played between their palms by Luo, and each one's body was stuck in a different position, and even walking was very difficult and chaotic. The other side. In the auction house. Li Ang walked to the front of the broken water tank step by step, stepping on the broken glass pieces under his feet, and there were bursts of crisp and pleasant sounds. Click. Pieces of glass were smashed. The original water stains have gradually integrated into the earth. Transparent shards of glass that refract light. The crisp sound of glass being smashed reverberated in this empty auction hall. All the people here have been stunned by the domineering arrogance of the overlord, and even if they wake up, they will not be able to escape Li Ang's perception. It can be said that now here, only Li Ang remains awake. Therefore, what he did next, no one could know except him. Dragon people. Li Ang narrowed his eyes slightly, smiling broadly, looking at a beautiful woman with a bubble hood lying on the ground with a meaningful expression. Probably heard the sound of the crisp glass shards on the ground. Shalulia Palace gradually woke up, and she was still a little dizzy when she was shocked by Rayleigh's overlord color. Her long eyelashes trembled, the bubble head mask fell, and the gauze covering her face also fell, revealing her delicate face. Thin long beauty, big watery eyes, beautiful nose, fair skin like jade, and bewitching red lips that are almost bloody, make her charming. Without the hood, Zaluria Palace completely showed her own charm. There is no denying that this is a beauty among Tianlong people. It's just that her demeanor is rather arrogant, and she thinks that she is superior to others, but her appearance is still quite beautiful. At this time, Shalulia Palace gradually regained consciousness, after seeing Li Ang at close range. She stroked her face, feeling her delicate skin, and after there was no veil to hinder her, she burned with anger and shouted, "You untouchable, how dare you come so close to me? Besides, looking at my appearance, absolutely unforgivable. Then how are you going to punish me? I'm all ears." Li Ang walked to the side of Shalulia Palace, the corner of his mouth raised an arc, and said lightly. NLT, 44 and GT. Chapter 150_Despair of the Dragon People 13/15 Please customize. You. Shalulia Palace's beautiful eyes widened, round and round, staring at Li Ang. For a while, she couldn't even make a sound. Her red lips trembled, her delicate and pretty face became a little red, and her anger rose. No one has ever dared to speak to her like that. However, today Li Ang dared to talk to her face to face like this, which made her feel so how could she not be angry? What's wrong with me? Li Ang sat on the chair next to him, looking at Zaluria Palace, who was slumped on the ground. His smile continued. I'm going to kill you, you untouchable, I'm going to kill you right away. Shalulia Palace's red lips trembled, revealing her white teeth, and roared. Her voice was slightly hoarse, and it was a bit harsh. In the huge and empty auction hall, only her angry and sharp voice was left. You still don't understand your situation. Li Ang narrowed his eyes slightly and smiled. Well. Shalulia Palace raised her brows and asked in a cold voice, now, Lika kneels down for me, and I may be able to spare your life. Otherwise, your death is coming. Aren't you wondering why? Am I the only one still awake here? The corners of Li Ang's mouth moved slightly, and he smiled lightly. I advise you to kneel down and apologize to me. I'm telling you seriously now that I'm in a bad mood and need to kill someone to vent. If you don't want to die, kneel down for me immediately. Shalulia Palace's tone was still high profile and angry. Heard. Li Ang was unmoved, shook his head and chuckled. It seems that although you look much better than that fat pig, your head is still the same as the Tianlong people, showing a negative number. Damn you. Shalulia Palace's pupils shrank and she gritted her teeth. As a celestial dragon, today, she was not only attacked by others and passed out. After waking up, she was so humiliated by someone she regarded as untouchable, which made the anger in her heart almost burn herself. It's not up to you whether I should die or not. Besides, what you need to consider most now is whether you will die or not. This is a very serious matter. Li Ang smiled and said bluntly. Do you still want to kill me? Do you know how much trouble you will cause if you kill me? Do you have the guts to kill me? Stop joking. Shalulia Palace sneered, indifferently, with a confident expression. I can't cry without seeing the coffin. Li Ang stood up from the chair with a smile on his face, and walked to Zalulia Palace step by step. Now, kneel down and apologize to me, I will spare your life and make you my slave. This, should be proud, to be my slave, what an honor it is. Shalulia Palace sneered again and again, raised her head, revealing that delicate face, with an extremely arrogant expression, not caring about her own situation at all. Come to think of it, I have spent 10 or 20 years in a pampered environment. Her thoughts have also been finalized. It can't be completely blamed on her. It can only be said that she was born and the education she received fixed her thoughts on the superiority of others. Let her think that anyone in this world is a pariah. Only their Tianlong people are the highest race. After so many years of education, she naturally couldn't escape her superior attitude. To focus on, it is because of the education of the Tianlong people that the education they received since childhood was different, and that makes them grow up like this now. It's like those children who are deliberately taught to kill people. Can it be said that these children are absolutely guilty? Chapter 150_Despair of Tianlong People 13/15 Please customize. NLT, 45 and GT. Can it be said that these children are absolutely guilty? Same thing. The Tianlong people, in fact, are just a bunch of self-righteous trash who have been trained by others. Only the form is different, but in essence, it is exactly the same. On the other hand, a simple sentence is deliberately used to describe the Tianlong people deliberately. Their thinking has been distorted. Including the Shalulia Palace, their thoughts have been finalized, and they have been educated since childhood, thinking that their bloodline is superior to others, the most noble bloodline in the world. Therefore, she doesn't care about the lives of ordinary people, and she also thinks that she is a Tianlong person, so she can make the world revolve around her. In her eyes, everyone is a pariah. Slave. Li Ang walked in front of Zaluria Palace, approached the other party's delicate and pretty face, smiled and said, I will let you correct your own thoughts, don't worry. From now on, I declare that you are mine. Slave. What? Shalulia Palace's eyes widened and roared, how dare you talk to me like that? You want me to be your slave? I am a Tianlong man. You dare to let a Tianlong person be your slave, you are just crazy. It's you who's crazy. Li Ang slowly stretched out his hand and directly grabbed Shalulia Palace's neck, and lifted the other party easily. Woohoo! Shalulia Palace couldn't breathe, her pretty face turned red and she struggled constantly, but she still stared at Li Ang fiercely. In her heart, she was constantly thinking about how to punish Li Ang after she got out of trouble. Li Ang, who has the ultimate knowledge, can naturally hear the inner thoughts of Shalulia Palace. He can't help laughing dumbly, shaking his head and saying, I still don't know how to repent. You, let go, let me go. Shalulia Palace swayed her hands constantly, grabbed Li Ang's arm tightly, spoke with difficulty, and a faint voice came out. What did you say? I can't hear you. Li Ang used a little force with his right hand, strangled Shalulia Palace's neck, and asked with a smile. Woohoo! Shalulia Palace struggled constantly, but she still couldn't get rid of it. Her eyes gradually turned white, and she could vaguely feel that the breath of death enveloped her. Are you going to die? This pariah, dare to kill her. This is what makes her unable to understand. How dare the other party do this, how can they do it? But she is a Tianlong. Immediately, Shalulia Palace struggled again with the last bit of strength. Her entire face was blood red, and her delicate face seemed to be stained with a layer of red fuel. Oxygen gradually disappears. This is the oxygen that you celestial dragons consider despicable. But now you, in order to survive, haven't you breathed this oxygen? Li Ang's face changed and he smiled. However, Shalulia Palace could not answer, and could only struggle constantly. The breath of death gradually filled his body. She was already desperate. From disbelief at first, it gradually became fear and despair. Because she really felt the threat of death, Li Ang in front of her would really kill her. This was the first time she had ever felt it. She was so close to her own death. NLT, 46 and GT. Chapter 151-Kidnapping the Dragons 14/15 Please customize. In the past, she thought that she was precious as a Tianlong person. No one in this world would dare to kill her. After seeing Li Ang, she still maintained this concept and was unswerving. Even if there are no guards around, she can calmly give orders to Li Ang, and even wants to punish Li Ang who has seen her appearance in front of her. But the end result came. The result made her unacceptable, and there was a psychological shadow on Li Ang in her heart. Fear, infinite magnification. Death came gradually. Forget it, killing you would be too boring. Besides, my goal is not to kill you, but to change you. This is the only challenge. Li Ang's right hand loosened slightly and smiled lightly. Immediately, Shalulia Palace followed the trajectory and fell to the ground. Breathing heavily, the towering Yu hung up and down, revealing the devil's figure. She was wearing white clothes, 273, tall, and her skin was very white, like a delicate jade, crystal clear. On the surface, she still has the capital of a beautiful woman. However, her character is too arrogant. Moreover, ordinary people still dare not do anything to her. It's a pity that she met Li Ang. In front of Li Ang, there is no distinction between Tianlong people. You dare to kill me. Shalulia Palace was breathing constantly, her beautiful eyes were full of horror. She stared at Li Ang, pointed at Li Ang, she couldn't believe it, and she was still angry in her heart. Why not? Li Ang asked back with a smile. I'm a dragon man. Shalulia Palace raised its head and shouted. Heard. Li Ang still shook his head and said bluntly, so what? Tianlong people, in front of me, are not even a fart. Actually, I really want to ask, you really don't know, who am I? Who the hell are you? Shalulia Palace finally regained some sense of sanity and asked calmly. After a death experience, let her get rid of some dragon people's arrogance. She more or less had some psychological shadows on Li Ang in front of her. So, now she doesn't dare to be too presumptuous. She is afraid. She was also afraid of death, afraid that Li Ang would suddenly attack and kill her. This moment, the arrogance that belonged to the Tianlong people was gone. My name is Li Ang. Li Ang approached Shalulia Palace's ear, and said with a radiance on the corner of his mouth. This breath blew directly to the delicate little ears of Shalulia Palace. In an instant, Shalulia Palace's whole body was shaking, her ears were a little red, her beautiful eyes were full of anger, and she said coldly, you untouchable, go away. Don't call a pariah like that, I'll be very troubled. If I'm troubled, I won't be able to control myself and kill you, maybe. Li Ang stretched out his hand, stroked the smooth orange hair of Shalulia Palace, and smiled lightly. Not to mention, it feels pretty good. At this moment, Shalulia Palace felt the temperature of Li Ang's palm, and the anger on her entire face burned to the extreme, her beautiful eyes widened, and she couldn't even believe what was happening in front of her. She, herself, is a heavenly dragon. Actually, being stroked by a pariah. This is something that she is arrogant and absolutely cannot tolerate. Immediately, Shalulia Palace was furious and shouted, you damn pariah, you are dead, I will definitely kill you. The naval headquarters will not spare you, they will send generals, you wait. Admiral of the Navy headquarters. Believe it or not, they will take a detour when they see me. Chapter 151-Kidnapping Tianlong People 14/15 Please customize. NLT, 47 and GT. Admiral of the Navy headquarters. Believe it or not, they will take a detour when they see me. Li Ang's smile was meaningful, said. Li Ang, wait. Suddenly, Shalulia Palace raised her brows and lost her voice. You are the one who provoked the battle with the Navy headquarters. You finally remembered it. I thought, in the mouth of the Tianlong people, am I really so unknown? But now it seems that I am not a nobody. Li Ang said slowly with a smile. It's really you. Shalulia Palace took a deep breath, calmed down, and said. Her mood at the moment has changed dramatically. Unexpectedly, here, I met Li Ang. This person, in the mouth of Tianlong people, is also quite extraordinary. Even the arrogant Tianlong people have already circulated a message internally. In the sea, try not to collide with Li Ang. This will not only make it difficult for the Navy headquarters, but even the world government will find it difficult to issue orders to deal with Li Ang. Therefore, Tianlong people have to restrain themselves as much as possible, not to provoke Li Ang. But Shalulia Palace never thought that today, she actually met Li Ang, and she also had a dispute with Li Ang. But she, who is precious as a Tianlong person, still won't bow her head easily. Since you're Li Ang, I think this matter, just forget it. Otherwise, if you kill me, it will be very difficult for you to do it. Shalulia Palace calmed down and whispered. Forget it. Li Ang laughed dumbly, shook his head and said, I don't want to let it go. Since I have already done something to you, naturally, we have to follow through. What are you trying to do? You don't want to kill me, you have other goals. Shalulia Palace took a deep breath and said coldly. You have seen it, and now it seems that the Tianlong people are not brainless. It's just that they are too blind and arrogant, so they can't recognize the current situation. Li Ang was a little surprised and smiled. You dare to attack the Tianlong people? Shalulia Palace's red lips parted slightly, and her tone became heavier and heavier. Her arrogance collapsed in front of Li Ang. The person in front of him is no ordinary person. Rather, a terrifying monster whose power overwhelms the Navy headquarters. Such a monster made her feel difficult as a Tianlong person. If she had known Li Ang's identity earlier, she would naturally not be so arrogant, and she would definitely be restrained. The biggest problem now is that I want to kidnap you as a Tianlong person. Li Ang smiled and said directly. Aren't you afraid of the crazy revenge of the Navy headquarters and the world government? If something happens to me, the world will be in turmoil. You can't afford such consequences. Shalulia Palace still firmly believes that Li Ang will retreat. Unfortunately. From the beginning, Li Ang had no intention of letting her go. Hear the words of Zaluria Palace. 1.2 Li Ang laughed, and Lang Lang said with a smile, then, someone has to know that I kidnapped you. Look now, around here, does anyone know that I kidnapped you? Navy, world government, they only know that you disappeared from the auction house. And, before that, a conflict broke out with that group of pirates and was knocked unconscious. As for the rest, who knows but me? Li Ang laughed heartily, echoing in this empty auction hall. This moment. Shalulia Palace finally understood her situation, her red lips trembled, her whole body trembled uncontrollably, and her delicate face showed a strong sense of fear. She looked at Li Ang with the last glimmer of hope in her beautiful eyes, and said, You let me go, I thought nothing happened, what do you think? Looks like you still don't understand what I mean. Li Ang shook his head and said. NLT, 48 and GT. Chapter 152_planning is in progress 15/15 please customize. What do you want? I can give it to you. Shalulia Palace panicked and said quickly. She didn't want to be kidnapped. What if she was killed? Killed, she would also be defined as missing. Because, apart from her and Li Ang here, no one would know everything that happened here. She disappeared into this world, and no one could find out. Think of this. Her mood became even more fearful, and Li Ang in front of her brought her a strong sense of fear. The arrogance of the Tianlong people is gone. I want the sense of accomplishment of taming a proud draconian woman. That's what you can get from you. Li Ang stroked the white face of Zaluria Palace with his right hand and smiled. You, what do you want to do to me? Shalulia Palace's pupils shrank, and she took a half step back in horror, saying, Your thinking is still too simple. Li Ang walked to Zaluria Palace and explained, Don't worry, I won't kill you, I can guarantee this. But, I will train you to be a qualified slave. This is the slave of a Tianlong person. Thinking about it makes people excited. What do you think? Such a sense of achievement is enough to make any man's blood boil. Speaking of this, Li Ang laughed a little excitedly. But his smile, in the ear of Zaluria Palace, was like a devil's smile. You want me to be your slave? Shalulia Palace's beautiful eyes widened, round, and her face was full of shock. She is a dragonborn. She thought it was a great insult to herself to bow her head. But now, Li Ang not only wants to make her bow her head, but also make her a qualified slave. A slave of the dragon people, this is simply unprecedented and sensational. No, you can't do that. The world government won't spare you, and I won't spare you, my family, I will definitely kill you. Shalulia Palace hurriedly stepped back, a pair of long legs swaying in Li Ang's sight. She looked around, trying to find a way out of here. If you can take it out here, the other party will definitely not dare to do it. With this thought in mind, Shalulia Palace's eyes turned, and she always paid attention to Li Ang behind her. When she saw Li Ang who disappeared, she froze and said in a bit of horror, Where is the person? Where did the person go? After speaking, she realized that her chance might come. Immediately, she wanted to escape from the broken wall. Can you escape? Suddenly, a voice appeared. Li Ang's figure appeared in the sight of Shalulia Palace. With a smile as always, he walked calmly. You. Shalulia Palace was frightened, her red lips trembled, and she frantically fled in this auction. But how could her ordinary physique escape Li Ang's palm? Not to mention her, even if it was Kizaru, he wouldn't be able to escape Li Ang's pursuit. Don't come here. Shalulia Palace picked up a gun, pointed at Li Ang, and shouted, I told you not to come here, otherwise, I will kill you. However, her hands holding the pistol trembled a little, obviously, she was shrouded in fear. Boom. Finally. She still pulled the trigger. The bullet pierced the air. Li Ang slowly stretched out 2 fingers, clamped the bullet, and used terrifying power to squeeze the bullet out of shape, then threw it aside at will. You monster. Shalulia Palace's pupils shrank, and her beautiful eyes were full of fear. One after another, she quickly fired all the bullets from the pistol. But the same. Chapter 152 _ The plan is in progress, 15/15 please customize. And LT, 49 and GT. But the same. Li Ang was unscathed and caught all of these bullets. Not a single bullet could escape the domineering range of his knowledge. You can use whatever means you have. If you have it, then I'm sorry, I'm going to do it. Li Ang stepped on the broken glass block. Click. A burst of crisp sound is chilling. In this empty auction hall, only Zaluria Palace and Li Ang remained awake. But just like this, Zaluria Palace was even more afraid. She wants to escape from here, because here is her nightmare. She has grown up so much, and she has never experienced such a thing. What happened today has simply subverted the concept in her head. Tianlong people, shouldn't they be worshipped by everyone? Why, Li Ang, who is in front of him, dares to do something to her? He even wanted to train her to be a slave. A slave of the heavenly dragons is simply unheard of. Don't come here, I beg you not to come, I beg you. Can you let me go? I dare not do anything to you, I promise, I will give you a lot of Bailey. Shalulia Palace's mentality collapsed, slumped on the ground, sobbed, and shouted, I can give you the status you want. I can give you anything you want, just please let me go. What I want, you can't give. Li Ang's mouth moved slightly and smiled, only by doing it myself can I get everything I want. And you are what I want. The slave of the Tianlong people, thinking about it makes people excited. No, you can't. Shalulia Palace put her hands on the ground and kept shrinking. Her delicate facial features were all expressions of fear. She burst into tears and said, "Let me go, please let me go." Do Tianlong people still have such a posture? Li Ang's face was calm, and he said lightly, "Don't Tianlong people think they are superior? Why do you want to beg me for mercy? This is not right. Tianlong people will not beg for mercy." Suddenly, Shalulia Palace's expression froze. There was nothing she could do, and Li Ang in front of her didn't seem to let her go. But Li Ang's strength made her feel deep despair. "Don't worry, this process will be very easy for you. You will not suffer, and occasionally a little bit of pain is inevitable. But in the end, you will be very happy. It's a long process, but you have to learn to enjoy it. You will get different results, and you will also gain a different life. You are my slave, my dragon slave." Li Ang walked to the side of Zalulia Palace, leaned against each other's ear, and whispered. His words were very gentle, hardly any anger could be heard. But in the eyes of Zalulia Palace, these words were more difficult for her to accept than killing her. "In front of me, you can't even commit suicide." Li Ang smiled lightly and said. "You devil, you are the devil." Shalulia Palace's red lips trembled in fear, and her whole body trembled, like a frightened kitten, slumped on the ground, unable to move. She could only watch in horror as Li Ang approached. Suddenly, a terrifying aura descended and enveloped her. Overlord is domineering. After being hit by Li Ang's domineering arrogance for a while, her consciousness gradually became blurred. Finally, she closed her eyes and fainted. "When you wake up, it will all begin." Li Ang slowly stretched out his hands and hugged the soft body of Zalulia Palace. He looked at Shalulia Palace's delicate face. Even after fainting, Shalulia Palace's face was still hung with the naturally arrogant attitude of the Tianlong people. Immediately, a meaningful smile appeared on his face. Taming a Draco female as a slave is a huge undertaking. Moreover, it also filled Li Ang's heart with a sense of anticipation. Chapter 153 _ The General arrives, 1/10 please customize. Outside the auction. A group of navies are dominated, and with their strength, they are not the opponents of the Straw Hat Pirates, Kid Pirates, Heart Pirates and others. At the same time, in the Chambord Islands, 11 supernovae have also been concentrated here. These pirates are too strong, but brothers, let's persevere and the general will come. That's right, after the big future, it will be their death. Kill these damn pirates. Quote. The navy was in chaos, shouting loudly. However, their strength is not as good as that of the pirates after all, and they were killed so tragically. Quick fight, the Straw Hat Master. Luo looked at Luffy and said in a slightly low voice. Out of the corner of his eye, he was always paying attention to the movement behind him. It seems that he is afraid that something terrible will happen. There was no movement in the auction house behind, which made him a little relieved. As long as Li Ang didn't do anything, he wouldn't be so flustered. I know. Luffy nodded, and the rubber machine gun shot up dozens of Navy soldiers. The breeze was blowing, and the weeds on the ground swayed. At the same time, over 27 Chambord. A golden light flashed away. Boom! The golden light penetrated the trunk of the mangrove tree, directly destroying the numbers, raising a terrifying shock wave that swept the audience, causing the ground to tremble. A group of rays of light gradually formed a figure, wearing golden clothes all over and wearing a white Justice Navy uniform. The yellow monkey appeared here. The Straw Hats, where are they? The corner of Huang Yuan's mouth hung a wretched arc, and smiled faintly. Immediately, his figure disappeared from the air and landed on the ground. He was walking by the side of the road, clearly recognized. Kazuna, Pulsolino. A pirate's pupils shrank, took a deep breath, and some terrifying thoughts sprouted in his heart. if I kill Kiwi, wouldn't it be famous in the sea? Even more famous than the legendary Liang. Thought here. The pirate became more and more unable to contain his heart, holding a gun and gradually aiming at Kizaru. He stood in the dark corner of the street, pointed the gun at Kizaru, and pulled the trigger. Boom! The bullet pierced the air, and in his sight, it attacked Kizaru's forehead. Die tilde. The pirate's eyes flickered with brilliance, and he was very excited. Seeing that the bullet was about to penetrate Kizaru's head, he even imagined the moment when he became famous. The bullet arrived at Kizaru's head, and Kizaru's face was calm, and it seemed that no bullet attack in pirates existed. Right in the sight of this pirate. I see. The bullet penetrated the forehead of Kizaru, emerged from the other end of the head, and sank into the wall. And Kizaru himself, unscathed, was still thinking about something. Ah! The pirate was stunned, holding a pistol, when he was about to launch a second attack. The figure of Kizaru had disappeared from his sight. What about people? The pirates quickly looked around and found no sign of Kayabu. Could it be that Huang Yuan escaped? Found out by him. Immediately, the pirate's face changed dramatically, and he was about to escape from here. Are you looking for me? Kizaru narrowed his eyes slightly, patted the pirate's shoulder with his right hand, and smiled. Yellow ape. The pirate turned his head in horror, and as expected, seeing the wretched face of Kizaru, the fear in his heart was magnified infinitely, and it could not be contained. Buzz. A golden light flickered. Boom. On the ground, the pirate was already dead, completely pierced through the heart, and blood flowed. Huang Yuan held the phone bug in his hand, but he couldn't make a call. He was slightly annoyed. How can I contact Zhan Daowan? An accident happened to the Tianlong people, so I can't stand in these muddy waters. Chapter 153 _ The General arrives, 1/10 please customize. And LT, 51 and GT. Huang Yuan held the phone bug in his hand, but he couldn't make a call. He was slightly annoyed. How can I contact Zhan Daowan? An accident happened to the Tianlong people, so I can't stand in these muddy waters. Forget it, then find another pirate and ask. After making up his mind, Kizaru disappeared. Immediately after. On the Chambord Islands, many pirates suffered. Finally. Yellow Ape found a specific location. Next second. He appeared right above the auction floor, standing in the sky, looking at the battlefield below. Now, the battlefield has come to an end. The pacifists are here. After many fights, the members of the Straw Hat Pirates killed a pacifist at a very heavy price, and they all fell to the ground, looking embarrassed. Luffy, let's go. Zoro took a deep breath and said. Go, have you left? The figure of Kizaru appeared beside Sauron, the corners of his mouth were slightly raised, and a golden dazzling light appeared on his body, appearing in the sight of the Straw Hats. He is the Admiral of the Navy Headquarters, Kizaru Porosalino. Robin's pretty face changed and he lost his voice. General. Sanji's face was heavy, and his heart was under great pressure. Call out. A terrifying light penetrated Soren's waist. Zoro's eyes widened, he vomited blood, and flew upside down more than 10 meters away, rolling on the ground, his whole body covered with blood. Sauron. Luffy, Sanji and the others shouted anxiously. Don't move, I'll kill you. Yusobu held a slingshot, his hands trembling at Kayabu, and he said quickly. At this time, Kizaru didn't care about this group of people, came to Zoro's side, slowly raised his right foot, and a golden light appeared, so dazzling that people couldn't open it. Have you been mentioned by the speed of light? Kizaru smiled and said his usual words. Puff. Yusobu started, his forehead was covered in cold sweat, and he used a slingshot to attack Kizaru. Mill kill, buckshot star. A lead bullet pierced the air and penetrated Kayabu's head, but did not leave any traces. Nature's fruit ability. Everyone was shocked and said. They simply have no way to deal with those with natural fruit abilities. Buzz. The light at the foot of the yellow monkey became brighter and brighter, making it clearly visible to everyone. Sauron. Luffy and the others were full of despair and roared, "Stop it, stop it. You, stop me." The hands of Yusobu holding the slingshot kept shaking, and a sense of fear enveloped his whole body. But he still insisted, competed with Kizaru, glared at Kizaru, and started drinking. "Get out of Zoro's side, otherwise, don't blame me for being rude." King Lee's. Sanji was already dispatched and kicked out with one kick, but it penetrated Kyabu's body without causing any scars. Natural department. The crowd was extremely heavy and depressed. See. Kizaru had an expressionless face, glanced at everyone present, and then put his eyes back on Sauron, and the light under his feet became more and more dazzling. Light speed kick. Jin Guang fiercely attacked Sauron. And Zoro had no way to escape, he could only watch the attack gradually come. No. Everyone screamed in despair. Boom. An explosion followed. Smoke billows. As the smoke and dust dispersed, a figure appeared in everyone's sight. Full of silver hair, Pluto Rayleigh. Holding a knife, he directly forced Huang Yuan back, with a smile, and said, "Huang Yuan, you are really unscrupulous. Don't you know that there is a monster here? If you alarm him, then you're in trouble." NLT, 52 and GT. Chapter 154_disappearing Tianlong people, 2/10 please customize. Monster. Huang Yuan's pupils shrank, subconsciously. Mentioned the word, monster, he thought of a terrifying figure. This character has left a deep impression on him to this day. The scar on his waist was left in the original battle. Huang Yuan raised his brows and asked, "Who?" "Li Ang." Rayleigh showed a smile and said lightly. "Not much to say, I didn't provoke him, and he wouldn't take the initiative to attack me. He made an agreement with the Navy, and it was impossible to attack me." Huang Yuan took a deep breath, a little surprised, and said solemnly. "With the previous agreement, he doesn't have to worry about Li Ang's actions. It's just that he was able to meet Li Ang here, which made him a little unbelievable." Tiancong Cloud Sword. Kizaru used the fruit's ability to take out a lightsaber and take the initiative to attack the Hades Rayleigh. Call out, call out, call out. One after another terrifying slashes cut through the ground and destroyed all the surrounding buildings. An hour later. Kizaru had a gloomy expression on his face, looking at the Bartholomew Bears who had come suddenly and had already knocked off the Straw Hat Gang, and asked, "Now, what position do you stand for?" The other side. Rayleigh glanced at Kizaru, and after looking at the sky again, his face was calm and he took the initiative to leave. Kizaru wouldn't take the initiative to provoke him, and naturally it was impossible for him to continue to entangle him after he chose to leave. In the face of Kizaru's questioning, Bartholomew was indifferent and said indifferently, "This is the agreement I reached with them." Well. Huang Yuan's expression changed slightly, and with a wave of his hand at the mouth of Shenchi, he gradually left here. Behind him, followed by Sen Taomaru, and the pacifists. "Father, where are we going?" Zan Taomaru was also a little angry and asked. "Find the Dragon Man." Kizaru looked ahead, golden light flashing on his body. "Along the way, all the pirates around have suffered, and under his anger, they have become airbags." The gate of the auction house. Kizaru and Zan Taomaru, together with a few pacifists, arrived at the gate of the population auction. "This kind of place should be destroyed." Zan Taomaru's face turned cold and she said bluntly. "The things here are not as simple as you think." Kazuna shook his head and said meaningfully. "In particular, today's population auction market has changed hands. Now the person in charge here is a terrifying existence that he doesn't even want to face. Later, after entering, don't talk nonsense, I will tell the whole process." Kizaru looked at Zan Taomaru and reminded him. Immediately, Zan Taomaru was puzzled, he had never seen Kyabu take something so seriously, which was unprecedented. "I see. Zhan Taomaru nodded. Although he was puzzled, he did not ask any further questions. Huang Yuan moved forward and said to himself, the Tianlong people were inside, and were stunned by the Straw Hat Gang. Come to think of it, they should still be staying here. Subsequently, Kizaru and Zhan Taomaru entered the auction. The remaining pacifists were dispatched by Zhan Taomaru to carry out a large-scale cleanup operation against the pirates here and catch all the pirates here. Just entered the auction. Chapter 154 Disappearing Tianlong People, 2/10 please customize. NLT, 53 and GT. Just entered the auction. Huang Yuan saw the mess everywhere, frowned, and said, these people were all stunned by the overlord domineering look. Find them separately, find the Tianlong people as soon as possible and return to their lives. Although unable to catch the Straw Hat Gang. But the main reason is because of the sudden appearance of the Bartholomew Bear. If the Tianlong people are safe and sound, then his sins will naturally be much less, close to zero, and will not have any impact on him. Yeah. Zhan Taomaru nodded and quickly searched for the people here. A long time. Zhan Taomaru saw that St. Charles was lying on the wall, and the redness and swelling on the other side's face almost made him unrecognizable. He immediately shouted, Master, found it. Well. Kizaru turned his head and walked towards Zhan Taowen's position. After seeing St. Charles Rose, he breathed a sigh of relief. This mission is not too bad. If you find another Tianlong person, you can go back and do business. Let's continue to look for it, but we can't miss it. By the way, let the naval branch here send someone over, and later, escort the Tianlong person away. Kizaru searched the crowd and gave orders to Zhan Taomaru. Don't worry, old man, this time, I will personally escort them back. Zhan Taomaru said with confidence on his face. After half an hour, Kizaru and Zhan Taomaru fell silent. Looking at the large group of pirates and nobles who were stunned by the domineering look in front of them, the pressure was heavy. Father. Zhan Taowen's throat was dry, and his eyes flashed a bit of surprise. Impossible, let's keep looking. Huang Yuan took a deep breath and forcibly suppressed the throbbing in his heart, saying. The two continued to search the crowd for 10 minutes. 10 minutes later. The two seemed to smell an unusual aura. Kazuna's expression was already a little dignified, and his heart was depressed, and said, Next, things become very complicated. I really don't want to participate in these troublesome things, but now, I have to participate in them. The Tianlong people have disappeared. Zhan Taomaru took a deep breath and slowly spit out a few words. No matter how long they searched, even if they turned the auction floor upside down, they could no longer find any trace of the existence of another heavenly dragon. Only Charles Rose was a heavenly dragon, the heavenly dragon named Shalulia Palace, who disappeared, and people disappeared here out of thin air. Things are troublesome. Zhan Taomaru said solemnly. A Tianlong person has just disappeared, and things here are getting more and more complicated. They can imagine what kind of terrifying turmoil will be caused when the disappearance of the Tianlong people is transmitted back to the Navy headquarters and even the world government. Let's think about it. Why did she disappear? Kizaru frowned and thought, she left by herself. This possibility, Wang Li's, is close to zero. The only possibility is that she was taken away. But the question is, who will take her away? Leave her. Could it be that the other party doesn't know that she is a Tianlong person? Or, the other party knows she is a Tianlong person and still insists on taking her away? Then the purpose and courage of this person are intriguing. Speaking of which, Kizaru seemed to have caught a faint trace, but his head still couldn't think it through. It was like, there was a wall blocking him in front of him, making him want to move forward, but was blocked in place, unable to cross this wall. Obviously, the answer is already there. Someone wants to hold the Tianlong people hostage. Zhan Taomaru's eyes gradually enlarged, his face full of shock. This is the first time this has ever happened. Actually, someone dared to hold the Tianlong people hostage. Who is this who has such courage? He grew up so big, and he had never heard of the incident of Tianlong being kidnapped. NLT, 54 and GT. Chapter 155 I am the master of my site, 3/10 please customize. What we need to think about now is, why is this person holding the Tianlong people? What is the purpose of him holding the Tianlong people? In this way, we can find out some clues. Kazuna whispered, lost in thought. Only by finding out what the other party wants can we get more clues to find out who this person is. The purpose of kidnapping the Tianlong people is easy to figure out. Want to threaten the navy. Or, want to get more wealth. These are all very possible. Besides, why did the two heavenly dragons kidnap only one? Also, is this celestial being still a woman? In terms of status, if you want to threaten the navy, obviously, St. Charles Rose has a higher status, and kidnapping him is a better choice. But this person did not choose St. Charles Rose, but chose the relatively low-status Zaluria Palace. In addition to the gender difference between the two sides, Kizaru couldn't think of a place where Zaluria Palace was more prominent than St. Charles Rose. If he was asked to kidnap, he would choose St. Charles Rose. The current situation made him feel a little dizzy. The person who disappeared was Zaluria Palace, not St. Charles Rose. To threaten the navy, of course, kidnapping two Draco men is the best option. But this man didn't do that, he just kidnapped a heavenly dragon. Is there any special meaning for him to leave another Tianlong person? Thought here. Huang Yuan's brows furrowed with 927, his whole face was full of distress. No matter how he thought, he seemed unable to come up with an answer. He could only rely on his own guesses to infer who the murderer might be. Hades Rayleigh. Impossible. He did not have the time nor the motive to kidnap the Tianlong people. Father, is this murderer on a whim? Zan Taomaru scratched his head and said tentatively. Not realistic. Huang Yuan shook his head and denied, abducting a celestial dragon on a whim. There is basically no such possibility. In this world, no one will provoke a celestial dragon on a whim. Because the consequences of doing so are too great, and no one can bear such consequences. Therefore, this possibility can be ruled out. This kidnapping case was premeditated. Zan Taowen asked, Master, what do you mean? This person has long expected that there will be Tianlong people here. Moreover, Tianlong people will be stunned, and then take advantage of the fishermen. No, most likely, this person is a participant. Kazuna shook his head and said. There is no one in this world who can arrange such a meticulous situation. The human heart is incomprehensible. Before this happened, no one could have predicted that the Straw Hats would do something to the Tianlong people, and even the Yellow Monkey would be no exception. Well, the only possibility is that this person is fueling the flames. Tatata. At this time, a footstep sounded. Huang Yuan's thoughts were interrupted, and as he looked around, a young man gradually appeared from the inside of the auction house, causing his pupils to shrink and his expression to become very heavy and depressed. Father. Noticing the fluctuations in Kizaru's expression, Zan Taomaru also looked at him. As expected. He also saw a young man walking in their direction with a smile. This person is. Zan Taomaru raised his brows and couldn't remember for a while. That monster, Li Ang. The corner of Huang Yuan's mouth moved slightly, and he explained in a low voice. He is, Li Ang. Zan Taomaru's eyes gradually enlarged, his heart froze, and his spirit was tense. You must know that this is to fight against the terrifying existence of the Navy headquarters alone. He admits that he has no such ability. Chapter 155 I am in charge of my site, 3/10 please customize. He admits that he has no such ability. In particular, Huang Yuan was seriously injured in Li Ang's hand. At that time, several generals were besieging Li Ang together, and he was severely injured. One can imagine how intense the scene was at that time. And Li Ang's strength, that's how terrifying. In the case of siege, he can still severely damage the general of Kyobu. Kazuna, we meet again, stay safe. The corners of Liang's mouth were slightly upturned, and with a smile, he said. Mr. Liang, long time no see. Kizaru nodded, in a vigilant mood, with a bit of fear on his face. He was beaten by Liang until a psychological shadow appeared. You are here, are you? Liang pretended to be suspicious, looked at the two of them, and said lightly. At the same time, his extreme knowledge and domineering unfolded, ready to steal the inner thoughts of the two. A celestial dragon disappeared. With a heavy face, Kizaru said truthfully, so, Mr. Liang, if possible. I hope AJFF can dispatch the Navy to search the auction site. It is very possible that the murderer hid this Tianlong man in the auction site. Quote. Because he carries a person, if he walks out of the street, he will be easily identified and his identity will be exposed. The biggest possibility is to hide this Tianlong person here. Kizaru looked at Liang and told his inner thoughts. Zan Taomaru was silent, he had no right to speak in a conversation of this level of people. When Huang Yuan said these words, Liang used the domineering arrogance of knowledge to explore what the other party was thinking. Fortunately, Kizaru didn't have the slightest doubt about him. The yellow monkey is still too simple. Liang's smile became brighter and he said bluntly, the Tianlong people disappeared. This is a big event. As the person in charge here, naturally, I express my deep apologies for the disappearance of the Tianlong people. However, this murderer is too bold. He dares to kidnap the Tianlong people. He doesn't know whether to live or die. You must know that the disappearance of a Tianlong person will cause turmoil in the world government. Then the sea will be in chaos. Liang showed a hint of emotion and said slowly. Mr. Liang. Huang Yuan suppressed his anxiety and was about to speak again, but was interrupted by Liang. I see. Liang smiled and said, then what? Admiral Kizaru, the agreement I reached with the Navy headquarters is not to easily conflict with the Navy, and there is absolutely no obligation to help the Navy. So, the Tianlong people have disappeared here, so I want to ask, what does this matter have to do with me? The auction house is my site, and I am in charge of my site. You guys want to act arbitrarily on my territory. I'm afraid, it's a bit whimsical. After speaking, Liang walked to the chair and sat down calmly with no expression on his face. Hearing that, if it were another person, Kizaru would probably have to do it. But facing Liang, he did not dare to act rashly. Because, there is no way, he can't beat Liang. If he does it, Liang can easily hammer him. Father, what should I do? Zan Taomaru looked at Kizaru and asked in a low voice. Mr. Liang, please be accommodating, we will not destroy anything in the auction house. Huang Yuan calmed down and said. But have you ever thought that my auction house here is patronized by the Navy? If this is spread out, how will people outside view my auction house? Besides, my business here will get worse and worse. Not sure. I don't want to use the future of my auction house to help your Navy for free. In this way, my loss will be too great. Liang waved his hand and said helplessly. From his standpoint, there is nothing wrong with this matter. If it was easy for Kizaru to search here, maybe, Kizaru would still suspect him. Of course. Even if the auction house is turned upside down, it is impossible to find the Zaluria Palace. She has been hidden by Liang in a very secret place where no one can find her, not in the auction house. Therefore, even if the yellow monkey raised the auction floor to the ground, it is impossible to find traces of the Tianlong people. But even so, Liang still had to block Kizaru's intentions. Hear what Liang said. Huang Yuan's face was full of grief, but there was nothing he could do. Chapter 156_conditions, 4/10 please customize. Really? There is nothing wrong with Liang's words. If he successfully asks Kizaru to conduct a search, then Kizaru himself should be more suspicious of Liang. In this way, after Liang obstructed Kizaru like this, Kizaru thought it was a normal move, and would not have too many doubts and other thoughts. Really? After saying these words, Liang used the extreme arrogance to cover Kizaru's whole body, always paying attention to the other party's psychology, activity. Mr. Liang, how do you want us to search? Kazuna waved his hand helplessly and said. Aside. Zantaomaru felt a little frustrated, and seeing that Kizaru was taking it so seriously, he didn't dare to act rashly. If it was someone else, he was afraid that he would not say a word and wait on the other side with an axe. Let me state first, for the future of the auction house, I didn't want to search for you. However, since you have all done your duty so faithfully, if I continue to obstruct it, it will be a bit inhumane. That's it. Liang thought for a while, then said with a smile, it's not impossible if you want to search, but you have to put forward attractive conditions. Otherwise, this auction house belongs to my land, and your navy can't mess around at will. What conditions do you need? Kizaru thought for a moment and asked. He had long expected that Liang would not be able to let them search here easily. As for the hard break. Before this idea appeared, he was snuffed out. His strength is still far from Liang. One-on-one, he is afraid that he will be killed by Liang. Even if it involves the Tianlong people, Liang cannot be regressed. Conditions, let me think about it. Corner of Liang's mouth twitched into a smile, and he said bluntly, well, give me a pacifist, what do you think? No. Zantaomaru's pupils shrank and hurriedly said. Hearing this, Kizaru also nodded and explained, pacifists can't fall into the hands of people outside the navy. Even if you can get it easily, Mr. Liang, we still won't give this kind of thing easily. That's it, then give me a 100 million berg pretense. It's also an explanation to those outsiders, let them know that your navy only entered here with my consent. Instead, your navy used your power to forcibly enter here. The two give people a completely different impression. If you think about it, you should be able to understand. Liang thought about it and said casually. Suddenly, Huang Yuan was still hesitant. Could it be that you can't even give 100 million berries? Then you can get there as you come. There's no need to waste time here. Liang waved his hand and said lightly. Okay, just 100 million bergs. Kizaru nodded and agreed to Liang's conditions. If that's the case, then go ahead and search, remember, but don't let those navies destroy the things in my auction house. If you destroy these things, 100 million berges will not be enough. When the original price is calculated, I will let you show off at the original price. Liang sat on the chair and smiled lightly. Nature. Kizaru nodded and ordered Zantaomaru to lead the navy to search. A large group of navies poured into the auction hall, searching every corner of the huge auction hall, searching every inch. After all, it's about the Tianlong people, and it can't be done so easily. If you can't find the heavenly dragon, Kizaru will be in big trouble. At that time, the world government will be convicted, and there will be a lot of trouble. Even, many CP0s will be dispatched to search for relevant clues in the sea. Chapter 156_Conditions, 4/10 please customize. Even, many CP0s will be dispatched to search for relevant clues in the sea. However, if they can't find it here, then these people can only return without success. Of course. If Liang didn't want them to find out, even if they found the ends of the earth, they wouldn't be able to find the whereabouts of Zaluria Palace. Quick, find that lord quickly. There must be no loss. If the Tianlong people disappear within our jurisdiction, then our sins are too great. Brothers, work harder. Careful and careful search, no exceptions to any inch of land. Quote. A group of navies were looking for them one after another, and they were in a hurry. Kizaru and Zantaomaru stood in the center, their faces became heavier. After dispatching these hundreds of navies, I still could not find any clues. In this case, things are really going to be troublesome. Don't smash those things. Disco shouted to the Navy with a very proud expression. 0 katakana middle dot 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 katakana middle dot. What about the Navy? Isn't it? You have to give Lord Liang 100 million berry to search the auction hall. If there is no Liang, this group of Navy can be lawless. Thinking of this, Disco was fortunate. Fortunately, there was Liang. Otherwise, relying on him alone, it is basically impossible to stop these navies. Not to mention, the high search fee of 100 million berry to corrupt these navies. The other side. Liang sat in the chair with a calm face, watching the navies search without rushing. Anyway, the place where he hid the Zaluria Palace was at the auction. Therefore, no matter how these navies find it, they will never find it. At this time, St. Charles, who was beaten into a pig's head, woke up, looked around in confusion, and said, "Where is the person? Where am I? Here, where is it?" Sir Charles rose, "Your lord is awake." A man in black clothes hurriedly walked over and said excitedly. Immediately, Kizaru and Zon Taomaru also walked over, wanting to ask about the situation at the time. Liang glanced at Charles Rose casually, buying you expressionless and unmoved. He kidnapped Zaluria Palace. Apart from him and the other party, no one in the world knew about it. Therefore, his matter has absolute confidentiality. Ah, that damn pariah, he dares to do something to me. Charles Rose's consciousness gradually recovered, and he shouted loudly, his expression full of anger. Looking at a group of navy around. The anger of St. Charles Ross himself was even more turbulent, and he cursed, "You bastards, bring me back that pirate for me, and I will kill him." "My lord, they have left." A man in black was a little nervous and said tentatively. "What?" St. Charles Rose was excited and roared, "Your navy is a waste of food. You can't even catch a pirate. Instead, they escaped. What use do I want your navy to do?" "Sir, please calm down. At present, we have a more important matter that needs to be reported to you." The man in black took a deep breath, but chose to tell the truth. "Sir Charles Rose, Lord Zaluria Palace, she seems to have been kidnapped by someone else." Chapter 157 _ Let someone else take the blame for me, 5/10 beg for your own decision. What did you just say? Say it again. Charles Rose's eyes widened, filled with disbelief, and shouted. Big man. The man in black was a little nervous, but he still told the truth. Lord Shalulia Palace has been kidnapped. So now she is still missing. She was kidnapped. Charles Rose's eyes were full of shock, and he shouted, "Who dares to kidnap her? We are Tianlong people, those pariahs, how dare to do these things, absolutely unforgivable." "My lord, the real culprit has not been found yet," the man in black had to say. "Trash, you are all a bunch of trash. Immediately, find out that murderer for me, I will kill him at any time." St. Charles Rose roared with anger on his face. Yes. The man in black left immediately and joined the camp looking for Sha Luli, 83, Yagong. At this time, Kizaru and Zon Taomaru also followed. Kizaru said, "Sir Charles, in order to find out the real murderer, I have to ask, what was the situation at that time? I don't know, so it's inconvenient to disclose it." "You are, Kizaru." St. Charles Rose raised his brows. For Kizaru, he could still restrain a little sense of superiority brought by the Tianlong people, but he still didn't take Kiwi to heart. In his opinion, the navy is a dog raised by the Tianlong people. And the general is just the outstanding dog among that group of dogs. After all, it's still a dog. I don't know, I fainted at that time. Before that, Zalulia Palace was still sitting beside me. What happened after that could only be done by those pirates. St. Charles Rose said bluntly with an impatient face. That bothers me. Kizaru nodded, and gradually left with Zontaomaru. His eyes fell into contemplation. Since St. Charles Rose doesn't know, it seems that this time things are getting more and more complicated. There has never been anything like this before, so I can't tell the difference. What is the purpose of the murderer this time? After the yellow monkeys were ruled out one by one, only a few points could be confirmed. The first point is that the murderer did not want to threaten the Navy. If he wanted to threaten the Navy, St. Charles Rose would not stay here, and the two heavenly dragons would be kidnapped. Of course. There is not necessarily another possibility. This murderer can only take away a Tianlong person with confidence without being discovered. If both heavenly dragons were taken away, the object would be a little more obvious and easy to detect. However, even if only one person could be taken away, this person could not be Zaluria Palace. Therefore, the assumption that threatens the Navy does not hold true. Because of the status of Zaluria Palace, it is far from the status of St. Charles Rose, who is a male. Master, why don't you go and ask him? Zontaomaru took a deep breath and suggested. He was not very good at thinking, and at this moment, his mind has long been disturbed. Who? Huang Yuan raised his brows and asked. Li Ang. Zontaomaru thought for a moment and explained, with his terrifying strength, if he is here, he will most likely know who the murderer is. Just to see if he will tell us the truth. You were right. With his strength, the murderer's every move can't escape his eyes and ears at all. The premise is that all his time was in this auction hall. Kizaru's eyes flickered, and he made up his mind. Immediately. The two looked at Li Ang in the auditorium and walked quickly. Chapter 157 _ Let others take the blame for me, 5/10 Please make your own decision. The two looked at Li Ang in the auditorium and walked quickly. Huang Yuan stood in front of Li Ang and asked in a low voice, Mr. Li Ang, I want to ask you some questions. I don't know, is it convenient for you? Ask it. Li Ang leaned back on the chair, narrowed his eyes slightly, and said. What happened here? Were you there at the time? If you were there, did you see someone take the dragon woman away? If you know, please tell the truth. Huang Yuan was simple and clear, and asked directly. I was there at the time. However, I didn't find out who took her away, but I haven't heard of the murderer. Li Ang's face was calm and he said slowly. Is that so? Kazuna frowned and became even more puzzled. If Li Ang didn't find it, the killer's ability would be a little weird. Think about it, who is most likely to do it, take her away unconsciously, or take her away with a purpose? Isn't the matter clear? Li Ang's mouth moved slightly and said lightly. What do you mean? There is one person among the three pirates, the Straw Hat Pirates, Kid Pirates, and Heart Pirates. Kizaru's expression moved slightly, and he said tentatively. I didn't say it, everything is based on your own associations. I just said my own opinion. As for whether you believe it or not, that's your own business. Li Ang smiled lightly and said. There must be a culprit in this matter. If there is no back the pot, it is easy, it will be reminiscent of his head. Now, after messing up the matter, even if it is really found out later, the matter has nothing to do with the three pirate groups, and Li Ang himself is also an excluded figure. Although Li Ang was not afraid of being hunted down by the people of the world government, he would be happy if he could save some trouble. At least, for now, he doesn't want to leave the Chambord Islands just like that. The Straw Hats. Kizaru's face gradually became gloomy, and when he recalled the actions of Bartholomew Bear, he felt a burst of anger in his heart. This guy. The prisoner who was most likely to kidnap the dragons was released. In addition, there are Kid Pirates and Heart Pirates, none of them can be missed. A Navy soldier came, stood beside Kizaru, and said in a low voice, General Kizaru, we have searched the auction floor and repeated the inspection 3 times, but we still can't find Lord Zaluria Palace. I see, close the team. This result was within the expectations of the Yellow Monkey. Soon, under the leadership of Kizaru, a group of navies came and went quickly, and gradually left here. Including the Tianlong man, Charles Rose, was also escorted away from the Chambord Islands. But what happened today, after the news spread, is the day when the 3.3C is turbulent again. Kidnap the dragons. In Kizaru's heart, there are 3 goals that are most likely to be achieved. Straw Hat Pirates, Heart Pirates, Kid Pirates. These 3 pirate groups are most likely to act. But Kizaru didn't expect that his thinking had entered a misunderstanding from the very beginning. At first, he didn't think of Li Ang's head. It may be preconceived that Li Ang does not need to do such a thing. Then, along with the clues that gradually appeared, he pointed the finger at the 3 pirate groups. This made Kizaru put aside his doubts about Li Ang even more. Seeing that the auction house fell into a quiet atmosphere again, Li Ang sat on the chair with a meaningful smile on his face. After everyone who saw and heard the domineering sense of domineering left here, he got up from his chair and gradually walked into a dark passage ahead. Chapter 158_Professional Backpacker, 6/10 please customize. Naval Headquarters, Marin Vando. Office of the Marshal. Warring States looked heavy, looked at Kizaru, and asked, "Are you sure you can't find it?" "Yes, we searched back and forth 3 times and found no trace of existence. I'm afraid, she has been taken away from the auction," the Yellow Monkey said bluntly with a heavy face. As soon as he returned to Marin Vando, he immediately chose to report to the Warring States period. After learning that the Tianlong people were missing, the face of the Warring States gradually became heavy. It was the first time such a thing had happened since he became a marshal. The Tianlong people were actually kidnapped. Not to mention the Navy headquarters, even the world government will be alerted. Especially the group of Tianlong people living in Marijoa. If they know about it, would it be worth it? The Tianlong people who thought they were invincible in the world, when they learned that the people in them had been kidnapped, I am afraid, they would go crazy to the Navy headquarters to seek explanation. Thinking of this, Warring States felt depressed for a while, and said, "Do you know who the murderer is?" Most likely to be the murderer, there are 3 targets. 1, the Straw Hat Pirates, the 2nd, the Heart Pirates, and the 3rd, the Kid Pirates. Kizaru informed the Warring States period of the answer 09 he was thinking about. Why these 3? Warring States frowned and asked. The 3 pirate groups of them are in the auction hall on the spot. They witnessed the scene of St. Charles Rose being knocked down at that time. Naturally, the chances of doing it later will be even greater. As for the other ordinary people, they were all stunned by the overlord arrogance. Huang Yuan said quickly. Domineering and domineering. Sengoku was a little puzzled and asked. The king of Hades, Rayleigh, is in the Chambord archipelago. He used the overlord arrogance to make everyone at the scene faint. Moreover, I also fought with him, and finally escaped because of the Bartholomew Bear. Man. Huang Yuan's face was gloomy and uncertain, and he said slowly. Pluto Rayleigh, Bartholomew Bear. Warring States' eyes flickered brightly, obviously being stationed. A long time. He exhaled heavily, his head in a mess. He wasn't there, so naturally he didn't know the answer to these things. According to Kizaru's guess, the 3 pirate groups from the Straw Hats are the most likely to be the murderers. Besides that, there is one more person. Face became solemn, and he said, the original owner of the population auction was Doflamingo. But now, the owner here has changed. Who else can make Doflamingo bow his head? Warring States was surprised. He is, Li Ang. Huang Yuan took a deep breath and said. Suddenly, the Warring States also fell into silence, and when Li Ang was mentioned, his heart became heavy. The word Li Ang is the nightmare of the Navy headquarters. Why did Liang become the owner of the auction house? Here, a piece of information was revealed to the warring states. There should already be cooperation between Doflamingo and Liang. Thinking of this, the warring states period is extremely heavy. This is not good news. A notorious Doflamingo actually reached a cooperative relationship with a terrifying monster. This is definitely not what the warring states would like to see, nor what the Navy headquarters would like to see. However, the most important thing at the moment is to find the Tianlong people. How to deal with the matter of the Tianlong people is the first thing to deal with. Is it possible? It's Liang. The corners of the warring state's mouth moved slightly, and he said in a low voice. Unlikely. Kizaru shook his head and explained, he didn't have this motive, and he didn't have this need. During the period of time I talked to him, he behaved very calmly, and there was no abnormality at all. Chapter 158_Professional Backpacker, 6/10 Please customize. Kizaru shook his head and explained, he didn't have this motive, and he didn't have this need. During the period of time I talked to him, he behaved very calmly, and there was no abnormality at all. Also, I searched the auction house in the end and couldn't find any traces. So, if the murderer was him, he knew that there was no one hiding in the auction house, so he wouldn't refuse to ask for the search. But he didn't. He stopped my search and asked me to pay 100 million berry for the Navy to search. In the end, nothing was found. Kazuna expresses his inner thoughts. Don't say it's Huang Yuan's statement. In fact, the warring states period doesn't quite believe his own words. Liang kidnapped the Tianlong people. This idea seems difficult to hold. Besides that, Liang has no conflict with the Tianlong people. According to the information I have learned, Liang appeared last and never spoke to the Tianlong people. Therefore, he has no motive to attack the Tianlong people. Kazuna said again. At this time, the warring states period had also preconceived that Liang was separated from the scope of the suspect. They didn't know that the suspects were gradually washed away from their suspicions. Looking now, that is to say, those three pirates are most likely. But why did they do this? Don't they know the consequences of doing so? Warring states frowned, said. This is also something he can't understand. Are these people not afraid of the revenge of the world government? As far as I know, St. Charles Rose was stunned by the straw hat. Kizaru rolled his eyes and said bluntly. In this way, there is no question of whether or not to dare. But, did they actually do it? They have already done something to the Tianlong people. What else is there to dare to do? What did the Charles Holy family say? Warring states rubbed his temples and asked. They have been furious, especially St. Charles, who was yelling at him all the way back. Visually, according to this situation, Marin Vanduo will soon have no peace. Kazuna was a little helpless and smiled bitterly. If the Tianlong people came collectively, I'm afraid it would make Marin Vanduo uneasy. In particular, they can't have the slightest disrespect to the Tianlong people. The world government will definitely reprimand it. The Navy headquarters, sandwiched in the middle, is the most difficult person. Let me think about what to do. Sengoku frowned, raised his head, looked at the ceiling, and said, 923 inches dragon people, world government, pirates, who is it that kidnapped the Tianlong people? If the truth cannot be found, Malin Fando will not be at peace. From various pressures, even the warring states period shuddered. These three pirates kidnapped the Tianlong people. How do you feel? It's ridiculous. Warring states frowned, thinking in his heart. He always felt that what happened here is not simple, it should not be what he imagined. But they couldn't figure it out, and couldn't find any clues at all. In fact, did the three pirates really kidnap the Tianlong people? They don't have to. Want revenge on the Navy headquarters. But why not kidnap St. Charles Rose, but instead kidnap the Palace of Zaluria? Simply revenge on this person. The thoughts of the warring states became clearer and he hurriedly asked, who has the greatest hatred with Zaluria Palace? Marshal of the Warring States period, you also know the temperament of the Tianlong people. I'm afraid I can't count the people she offended. It should be that the three pirate groups have conflicts with her. Huang Yuan waved his hand and said. Then put the target on these three pirate groups. The Warring States said in a heavy tone. Dozens of Straw Hat Pirates, Kid Pirates, and Heart Pirates. They didn't know it at all, and they went there out of nowhere, and they carried a big cauldron for Liang. The crime of kidnapping the Tianlong people came to them so strangely. Chapter 159_Chaos Marin Vando, 7/10 please customize. Boo boo. The phone bug rang. Warring States took a deep breath and dialed the phone bug. Sure enough, not unexpected. An angry voice came from the phone bug. Warring States, immediately dispatch people to retrieve the Zalulia Palace. The disappearance of the Tianlong people cannot be lost. We must find her and bring her back intact. The voice of the 5 old stars seemed very solemn and angry. I see. Sengoku nodded, and he could only answer that. Now he is also helpless. Even if the 5 old stars resigned from his position, he could only say that, because he himself was not confident enough to find the real murderer and bring back the Shalulia Palace. I tell you, Warring States, this time, I can no longer suppress this matter. A group of celestial dragons from the Holy Land Marijoa have joined forces to put pressure on me. No matter what method you use, you must bring back Zalulia Palace in its entirety. I don't care about the process, I only care about the result. If you can't do it, then I can't help you. You just wait, those crazy draconians. After speaking, the phone bug hangs up. The marshal's office fell into silence. The Warring States' face was gloomy and uncertain, and there was absolutely no way to do anything. The Tianlongren urged again, could it be that he could bring back the Zalulia Palace? The sea is so vast, finding a person is like looking for a needle in a haystack, it is impossible to achieve. Only by starting from the murderer can there be such a chance. Issue a bounty. Sengoku looked at Kizaru and instructed, raise the bounties of the 3 members of the pirate group to a minimum of 300 million bells per person. Immediately dispatch personnel to find them. Yes, Marshal of the Warring States period. The yellow monkey nodded and said. Afterwards, Kizaru gradually left the office. For the next few days, Malin Fando was in chaos. Tianlong people, personally recruited, are so annoying in the Warring States period. But this will not only affect the efficiency of the Navy headquarters, but also cause the Sengoku's mood to become irritable. It can only be said that the group of Tianlong people are all stupid people. If they didn't bother the Warring States, the number of people they sent to inspect the traces of Zaluria Palace would be more, and the chances of finding Zaluria Palace would also increase. Unfortunately, under the interference of this group of Tianlong people, the efficiency has become particularly slow. Moreover, every day, Warring States had to suffer the interference of a group of Tianlong people, which made him feel aggrieved, but he did not dare to do anything to the Tianlong people. Faced with the group of arrogant Tianlong people every day, they are arrogant, and even the Tianlong people who don't even look down on him as a marshal, the depression in the Warring States is self-evident. Dong dong dong. There was a knock on the office door. Garp walked into the marshal's office, and in a hurry, looked at the Warring States and asked, Dragon people, have you been kidnapped? It's impossible. Why is it impossible? Warring States was full of anger and shouted, because of your good grandson, he even dares to beat the Tianlong people, what else is he afraid to do? No. Garp's face was firm, and he said bluntly, Luffy can't do such a thing, and neither can his crew. The person who kidnapped the Tianlong people is someone else. Cap, I'm sorry, I can't take your one-sided words to heart. I can't get in touch with their arrests. Are you here for this matter? If so, please leave, I want back to work. The tone of the Warring States period is unquestionable, and there is no possibility of dissuasion. In the past, many things, he has opened one eye and closed the other. Chapter 159 The Chaotic Marin Fando, 7/10 Please customize. In the past, many things, he has opened one eye and closed the other. But today, he will never be allowed to show mercy to the Straw Hats. The Tianlong people disappeared. This matter is not trivial. I brought up Luffy, and I know his character very well. He dares to fight the Tianlong people, but he won't do anything like kidnapping the Tianlong people. Carp frowned and said bluntly. Then how do you explain that he insisted on going out to sea to become a pirate, and he didn't come to help you be a Navy soldier? Can you explain this? If you can explain it, I will believe what you said. The Warring States said coldly. If the teaching is good, why would you go out to sea and become a pirate? This is what he has always wanted to question Carp face to face. 3 generations of a family, everyone is worried. The second generation Dorag has become a revolutionary army, which is extremely harmful to the world government. In the third generation, Monkey D. Luffy became a pirate. Are these not enough to show that there is something wrong with Carp's teaching method? Heard. Carp fell into silence and could only sigh helplessly, having nothing to say. If he had taught well, none of these things would have happened. Cap, go back. I know in my heart, if I can, I will weigh your words, and I will not act blindly. Also, I will not wrong anyone. Quote. I won't jump to conclusions until the truth is known. But it is undeniable that, at present, your grandson is the real culprit most likely to do this. Everyone has to look at the evidence. You can't rule out my suspicions about them because of your words. Besides, you have to be clear, they are pirates. Sengoku looked at Garp and said solemnly. Yeah, they're pirates. Carp gave a wry smile, turned around, and gradually left the marshal's office. After Carp left. Boo boo. The phone bug rang again. Warring States picked up the phone bug, and the scolding voices came from his ears again, causing chaos. How does your navy do things? Hurry up and find my daughter for me. If you can't find it, I want you all to be buried with my woman, you pariahs. Tianlong people, no insults are allowed, we must find her and punish the real murderer. That's right, as a marshal, you must be prepared. Quote. A long time. Zan Nuo Zhao's hung up the phone bug, sweat dripped down his forehead, and was speechless for a while. The disappearance of the Tianlong people is too serious. Because, no one can be sure whether this Tianlong female has died. A Tianlong person was killed by others. This is definitely a provocation to the world government and cannot be easily tolerated. Therefore, the position of the Warring States period is to find the real murderer and bring the Shalulia Palace back to the Holy Land Mary Joa intact. If it can't be done, from now on, the naval headquarters will never have a peaceful day. Kazuna, have you released a bounty? On it, show their every move. I want people all over the world to know this news, and it's best to provide us with some useful information. Warring States dialed Kazaru's phone bug and ordered. Don't worry, I do things, and I can't go wrong. Kazaru's words were particularly serious. It has been a long time since there has been something that made him so serious. Chapter 160 The shock caused by the disappearance case, 8/10 Please customize. The disappearance of the Tianlong people caused a shock that made the sea boil. The Chambord archipelago has entered a state of first-level alert. Some navies, under the blame of the Draco, were killed directly. The Tianlong people are angry and need many people to pay for it with blood. These navies have suffered unavoidable disasters, and they have become the airbags of the Tianlong people. They are directly obliterated, and no one will feel sad for them. Warring States, why don't you start the auction? The existence of this place is the root cause of the disappearance of the Tianlong people. I don't want him to continue to exist in this world. The words of the 5 old stars reached the ears of the Warring States period. Tianlong people will never tolerate anyone who has anything to do with this. Whether it is the pirates or the navy, they have all suffered a major purge. The disappearance of the Tianlong people had to make such a huge upheaval. To this, the warring states can only answer, we can't move that auction house. Why? Because, the owner of that auction house is Li Yang. The answer from the warring states period instantly made the 5 old stars become silent. If they can, they are not willing to fight against Li Yang. Although it is said that Li Yang has lost face to the Navy headquarters and the world government, the strength of the opponent is quite terrifying. Therefore, the 5 old 727 stars chose to ignore this remark. Take back the words they said before about destroying the auction house. Since it's Li Yang's auction house, it can't be moved. The 5 old stars spoke in unison. Not to mention the two of them, even the 5 of them would not think that the murderer was Li Yang. Because, with Li Yang's identity and strength, there is no need to do anything to the Tianlong people. This is the preconceptions, the disadvantages brought about. Once an idea is decided, it is very difficult to change. After today, the number of navies in the Chambord Islands has grown rapidly, but there are also some navies in eerie deaths. The anger of the Tianlong people must have some unlucky people to bear. It can be seen that the navy is nothing but the dog of the Tianlong people. When the dragon people are not happy, they can kill the navy at will. What's happening right now is a stark example. Hey, have you heard that the dragon man was kidnapped? What? Is it true? Even the Tianlong people have been kidnapped. I'm Di Guigi, who has the guts to do something to the Tianlong people. I don't know, but it is said that it was made by the Straw Hat Pirates. Some people say that it was the Kid Pirates, or the Heart Pirates. BHDD. What kind of pirate group is this? I've never heard of it. Quote. For a while, the news about the kidnapping and disappearance of the Tianlong people swept the entire sea area. And these news pushed the 3 pirate groups to the stage of the world, and let everyone know clearly that the disappearance of the Tianlong people has an inseparable relationship with these 3 pirate groups. In addition to these, Li Yang himself seems to be unknown. No one knows, in fact, he kidnapped Zaluria Palace. Everyone was misled by the news that he just started to show. First, the yellow monkey, in this is the warring states period, there are 5 old stars and others. As long as they don't doubt Li Yang, then Li Yang can't be discovered. He kidnapped the Tianlong people, it will sink to the bottom of the sea, and no one will ever know. New World, Dressrosa. King's Heights. Young Master, a big event has happened in the Chambord Islands. The strong man Pika with the Kaiseki fruit, dressed in armor, walked to Doflamingo's side and said quickly. Chapter 160 _ The shock caused by the disappearance case, 8/10 please customize. The strong man Pika with the Kaiseki fruit, dressed in armor, walked to Doflamingo's side and said quickly. Many family members are concentrated here. There are Sugar, Toripal, Diamante, etc., and the top cadres are all concentrated here. What's the matter? You're making such a fuss. Doflamingo was a little curious and asked with a smile. From our population auction site. No, from the population auction site of Lord Li Yang, an earth-shattering event happened. Even the Navy headquarters and the world government were moved. Pika took a deep breath and tried her best to calm the shaking of her heart. Toripal spoke in a hurry and said, a Tianlong man was kidnapped in the auction house and disappeared without a trace. For this reason, the world government and the Navy headquarters have sent personnel to search all over the world. Draconian clues. Dragon man disappeared. Doflamingo's pupils shrank, and he felt a heartbeat. Even he himself couldn't believe the news he heard. Although he is also of the bloodline of the Heavenly Dragon, he has not enjoyed the treatment of the Heavenly Dragon. However, he still knew very well in his heart how noble the status of those Tianlong people who were recognized were. Under normal circumstances, no one would dare to do anything to them. Because, this will trigger the general to come to crusade. Who did it? Doflamingo asked again. It is said that the Straw Hat Pirates, the Heart Pirates, and the Kid Pirates did it. Whoever it is, no one knows. All in all, the Navy headquarters has focused its attention on these 3 pirate regiments. If there are no accidents, the results will appear soon. Diamante said with a dry throat. But it seems that the Straw Hat Pirates have disappeared. The remaining 2 pirates are being chased all over the world by the Navy, and I believe there will be results soon. Torapal said. Fortunately, there is already the chassis of Lord Liang. Pika felt deeply grateful, said. Immediately, everyone nodded inadvertently in agreement. If the auction house wasn't Liang's chassis, I'm afraid that today's auction house would have been destroyed by the people of the world government. The people of the world government, it is precisely because of Lord Liang that they dare not do anything. Torapal looked particularly adoring, said. Even Doflamingo himself had to feel blessed. Fortunately, the auction house is not his. Otherwise, even his face cannot stop the determination of the world government to destroy the auction house. Thinking of this, Doflamingo's eyes flashed, he waved his hand, and drove everyone around him away. Okay, I get it, you all leave here, I want to think about it alone. After the crowd gradually left, Brother Doflamingo had a suspicious expression in his eyes. I don't know if it was his own delusion. I always feel that this matter should have something to do with Liang. However, he will not ask about these things and will not disclose them to others. Some things can be done, he just needs to know it himself, and it is not good for him to say it. Doflamingo thought so. At the same time, he expressed deep admiration and respect for Liang's methods. Immediately, he called the phone bug. Hey, is the batch of materials I want ready? Transport it to the magic triangle for me, and when I get there, someone will contact you. After hanging up the phone bug, Doflamingo raised his head and looked at the sky with a very excited expression. He has already prepared all the materials Liang requested. Cooperation has become more stable. Over the years, the most fortunate thing for Doflamingo himself is that he has reached a cooperative relationship with Liang. Chambord Islands. In a secret room. A tall and beautiful woman wearing a white noble dress was leaning against the wall, her eyes were slightly closed, and she was in a coma. Suddenly, those long eyelashes trembled, and a pair of big eyes gradually opened.